Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. It is a Fireball Hot Take Friday. That's right, Ignite Tonight. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So today I put a whole grid out there, was all ready for all these different topics ahead of the Texan game on Sunday. And how long ago, Ian? An hour and a half ago? How long ago did this little nugget drop?
I guess about an hour and a half, two.
About an hour and a half ago.
Yeah.
Brian Callahan met with the media. And Brian Callahan, head coach of Tennessee Titans, Brian Callahan sat down. And he told the media that Leroy Watson was out for the game on Sunday and that L'Jarius Sneed was out for the game on Sunday. Oh, and the Titans are placing L'Jarius Sneed on IR. Sneed has missed the last 5 games. He will also now miss the next 4. I guess in theory, he could come back for week 16, 17, and 18. But considering that the Titan season is pretty much over now anyway, I highly doubt we'll see L'Jarius Sneed ramp it up for 3 completely meaningless games at the end of the season. Now, I'm not going to take a victory lap today and say, I was right and I told you because I'm not the one who should be taking the victory lap today. You know who should be taking the victory lap today? Caroline Fenton should be taking the victory lap today. Because when Caroline and I worked together, it was hilarious. When she went to the midday show, there was this sentiment. I saw it on the text line. I would hear people say it to her. I think it kind of pissed her off, and it probably should. But people would say to her, you just are a miniature Jared. You just take what Jared says. You just take Jared's takes. And I'm sure sometimes I said things that she was like, oh, that makes sense. But it was Caroline Fenton who said to me, and I took it and said, hey, I'm taking this from Caroline. It was Caroline Fenton who said to me, when the Titans traded for L'Jarius Sneed, a future 3rd-round pick, and the big contract that came with it, who said, I don't understand what this administration's doing. She said, the reason they're there is because the last administration took too many risks on injured players. And deep down inside, I think that's the real issue. I don't think it's the A.J. Brown trade. I don't think it was busting on Corey Davis as the 5th overall pick and him only becoming an okay player. I think it was wasting a 2nd-round pick and a 4th-round pick and $15 million on Julio Jones. 31 years old, bad hamstring, coming off of an injury, and they gave up a 2nd-round pick. I think it was using a 1st-round pick on Caleb Farley, coming off of a 2nd back surgery. I'll never forget the day that the 3 of us sat around, Ian, Caroline, and I, and we read the public report about Caleb Farley's back. And I said, okay, everybody gets a vote, in or out, and all 3 of us said out. And they drafted Farley the next day. So John Robinson gets fired. They hire Ran Carthon, and the fans say, let Ran cook. This new administration, they're going to show you. They're going to do the exact same thing the last administration did that got him fired. And that's exactly what Caroline said at the time when the Titans acquired L'Jarius Sneed. What is the old saying? Dumb guys stay dumb, fat guys stay fat. And Ian, would you like to finish it?
Well, they say injured guys stay injured.
Injured guys stay injured. Injured guys always stay injured. Do you even know what Treylon Burks is out for right now? I don't.
He got hurt in practice, didn't he?
What's that?
I thought he got hurt in practice.
But do we know what the injury is? Is it a foot? Is it a hamstring? Is it a groin? Is it a tush? Is it a knee? Is it an ankle? Is it a...
I'll have to go back and check the injury report.
I believe it's a knee, but I don't know. But again, it's no different than any other injury Treylon Burks has had. Treylon Burks has had back injuries. He's had concussions. I'm sure he's had some finger injuries and some toe injuries and some... It's injured guys stay injured. But this is different, Jared. 30 teams across the league had a chance at L'Jarius Sneed. One team already had him and won a Super Bowl with him. And they took whatever they could get for him. We played a cut from Carrington Harrison, who is a radio host in Kansas City, who said, you may think that L'Jarius Sneed's knees are not that bad, but the people I've talked to say, yeah, they're that bad. The team that you played last Sunday, Minnesota, the team that's having a good season, Minnesota was another team that was sniffing on L'Jarius Sneed. They got to look at the medicals and said, nah, we're good. So again, when it comes to taking a risk on an injured guy, I get it. I understand. Because at that time of the year, the good, that's what they were thinking. The good. This is a lockdown corner who punched the ball away from Zay Flowers in the AFC Championship game. This guy can come to our team and he can be this kind of player, and he's injured. And we'll get into the actual injury itself. This whole helmet to the quad, and now it's IR, and he's going to miss at least 9 games, probably misses the rest of the season. That's a little fishy for me, but we'll get to that. That's $25 million right down the drain. That's a 3rd-round pick right down the drain. That is the Julio Jones trade. There were red flags when it came to Julio. There were red flags up and down. I pushed back on it. Caroline pushed back on it. Everybody else, the fans. Julio Jones, Jared, AJ, Julio, Derek, Ferkser, Reynolds. Who's stopping that offense? You do know that 31-year-olds coming off of hamstrings usually aren't sure bets. In fact, it's probably more likely to bet that he'll get hurt again. And I don't even remember what Julio Jones hurt when he was here. Maybe it was his hamstring. Maybe it was something else. I don't know. But Jared, they have doctors and trainers that they take physicals and they clear these guys, and the same medical staff that must have given you the thumbs up on Caleb Farley, that must have given you the thumbs up on Julio Jones. I believe it's the same medical staff that's here now. Todd Torricelli is the head trainer. And the Titans said to PK, they said, our trainers looked at the medicals from Kansas City and talked to their trainers. And I got to say, I think they think it's okay. Well, how's that working out for you? So, again, I don't know if there's any way to guarantee that a player is not going to get injured in the NFL, because freak things happen, and even some of the best get injured. Tom Brady was basically an Iron Man, except for the 1 year in which he missed because he tore his ACL. But then there are guys where medicals just scare teams. And for 30 other clubs, 31 if you want to include the Chiefs, who were not interested in giving L'Jarius Sneed a long-term deal, and I can promise you it wasn't because L'Jarius wasn't a good player. 30 other clubs said pass. And at the time, again, I've never seen a medical report on L'Jarius Sneed in my life, and even if I did, I am not qualified to be able to read that and tell you what it means for his future success when it comes to the NFL. But I also graduated with a bachelor's from Louisville. I didn't go to some fancy business school like Chad Brinker did. I didn't work and study side by side with the guy that took the AI model to detect cancer in patients and then built that out so that we could predict injuries in the NFL, as Chad Brinker bragged about before they traded for L'Jarius Sneed. But even I knew. I said, if everybody else in the league is not going to touch this guy with a 10-foot pole, then what are we doing talking about the Tennessee Titans trading for this guy, giving up a top 100 pick? And it'll be a good pick. This is going to be like pick number 65, because you're going to be picking at the top of the 3rd round. And $25 million this year, $50 million guaranteed, and the whole deal is $76 million overall. Remember what L'Jarius Sneed said when Caroline asked him about his knees after he got signed, go look at the film. I said, yeah, what you did is not what I'm worried about. What you will do is what matters. And I'll say this, the first 5 games Sneed played, they weren't great either. But the offseason of we know better than everybody else is why you're the worst team in the league, arguably, and why your prized acquisition of all the things you did this offseason, the biggest prize was Sneed, the one that cost you the most, because not only did he cost you money, but he cost you a draft pick, and he's essentially done for the year with a mysterious quad injury. Again, you can keep taking risks on Julio and Caleb Farley, but I probably wouldn't do exactly what the last guy did that got him fired. And that's what the Titans chose to do with Sneed. Dumb guys stay dumb, and I'm not saying he's dumb. Fat guys stay fat, and I can tell you L'Jarius Sneed ain't fat. But injured guys stay injured. And L'Jarius Sneed was an injury risk when they acquired him, and L'Jarius Sneed has been nothing but an injury problem for them. 615-737-1025. That's how we're starting today. 615-737-1025 here on the program. And Brian Callahan had some comments about L'Jarius Sneed and his injury. Again, I'm not sure I'm buying this. I'll explain why. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
So I got around a lot of really, really smart people. And one of the classmates I had a PhD in neuroscience from the University of Minnesota. He had an advanced analytics degree from Oxford. And he helped design the AI technology for one of the top medical device companies in the country, where the AI was used to help the doctors identify cancer in patients. And I was just fascinated by this. And so I took what was a football problem and we put it in the context of AI. And one of the problems that we have in football is we spend a lot of money on players that don't pan out for injury. A lot of times they get injured and you end up paying for them injury settlements, or you end up cutting them once they get healthy. I was like, if we can reduce our pool there, if we can reduce our risk within that pool of players, I mean, that would be a game changer. If you can save an owner $1 million, $2 million off of one decision, I mean, that's a game changer. So I got with these guys and we started to attack the problem. And to make a long story short, we were able to develop some models that seemed promising.
We were able to get these models with my fancy business school degree to figure out injuries. Because if we can save the owner $1 million, imagine what that's going to do for our football team. How'd that help with L'Jarius Sneed? How about saving the owner $25 million, Chad Brinker? So, again, a lot of people, I haven't heard anybody say this yet, but I'm sure it's coming. Somebody's going to say, Jared, how were the Titans supposed to know about this? It was a helmet to the quad. L'Jarius Sneed against the Colts played 99% of the snaps. It was a helmet to the quad, and it hurt in lifetime, but they got it looked at after the game. The MRI said it was worse than they thought, and it wasn't the knee that was supposedly bad in Kansas City. So how can you possibly be mad when it comes to the Titans, Jared? I don't buy this whole knee to the quad thing. Like, I'm just going to tell you, helmet to the quad, I don't buy this. This doesn't make any sense to me. And I've been saying this. How long have I been bringing up this Sneed thing, saying this doesn't make any sense to me?
A week or so? Week or
I
two?
mean, I'm going to say about 3 weeks. I feel like when they said, hey, he took a knee to the quad and he's out for the Buffalo game. Okay. I mean, hey, it happens. He's out for the next game. Okay, happens. He's out for the next game, still hasn't practiced. I'm like, okay, hold up, something's fishy. Now, I'm not going to tell you what it is because I have no idea and I got no way of knowing. But again, let's follow this process here. L'Jarius Sneed takes a helmet to the knee, or to the quad, excuse me. It's very important that we delineate that, although the quad is connected to the, got it. So L'Jarius Sneed takes a helmet to the quad at the Colts game, finishes the game, and plays 99% of the snaps. He makes the final defensive tackle for the Titans in that game. We've heard stories of guys playing through an injury and then after the game realizing that they played with a torn meniscus or they tore their MCL or something like that. So it's not uncommon. Ryan Tannehill had a bad ankle. They gave him a little juicy juice. He went back out there and played, and he missed 3 weeks. It is not impossible to go back in a game. It's okay. But then all of a sudden, this kind of turned into like well, what is it? Because they didn't put him on IR when they did that MRI that revealed that it was worse than they thought. And L'Jarius Sneed talked to the reporters last week and said he could be back any day now. Said he was taking it day by day. And yet he never returned to the practice field. And they didn't put him on IR at the beginning. And they didn't. And here's another thing that I find really fishy. This was Brian Callahan today talking about L'Jarius Sneed trying to return from injury and just how hard he tried, but I guess they got to put him on IR.
Sneed will also go to IR tomorrow. Here's how this, just so I can be clear and transparent so you guys have an understanding of how this worked. As I said before, right, turned out, thought he had a quad bruise. Pretty significant quad bruise, but didn't get better very fast. Turns out after we did some scans on it, he had a pretty significant quad strain on top of that. Those things generally are a couple of weeks. Felt like we'd have a chance to get him back. Has not progressed. It's been complicated, more complicated than a normal strain would be. So the rest is the best thing for him at this point. Not ruling out a return before the end of the year, but the IR at this point makes the most sense for him. Take a couple weeks and try to get that quad right. So it's been sort of a up and down, back and forth injury for him, complicated. This is the best thing at this point to put him on the IR for the next 4 weeks, and we'll see where he's at again. Not ruling out a return, but he will go on IR tomorrow.
Okay, so let me get this straight. He had a bruise on the quad, according to Brian Callahan. He had a bruise on the quad. And then when they did a scan, they saw he also had a bad quad strain. And those are usually about 3-week injuries. We're at week 6, and it's not getting any better. And this was Brian Callahan, Ian, if we've got it. This was Brian Callahan earlier in the week when asked about whether or not L'Jarius Sneed would play.
Any idea on Sneed this week?
I would say no this week, most likely. But again, hopeful that that's getting closer.
Oh, it's getting closer to IR. That doesn't add up. That doesn't add up. Again, I'm not telling you what it is. I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole of saying what I really think is I think it's his finger and that I'm not going to do that. But again, what the Titans are telling us, I do not believe. If they did the scan and they saw, hey, bruise, it's a horrible bruise, and he's got a quad strain, and it's that bad, wouldn't he go right to IR? And by the way, this isn't baseball where a pitcher can go on IL or can go on the IL. It used to be the DL, now it's the IL. Pitcher can go on the IL and he hadn't pitched for 4 days. And so it's retroactive to the 4 days and you get those back. That doesn't happen in the NFL. He's out for the next 4 games. So again, Callahan then gets up in front of everybody today and he says, well, when we looked at it and we did the first scans, we saw a bad bruise plus a serious quad strain. And he said the quad strain usually is about 3 weeks. Ian, how long is IR in the NFL? The mandatory sentence for IR.
Minimum 4 games.
Oh, that's convenient, isn't it? Well, we looked at it. He had a 3-week injury, and this is a 4-week. Bull crap. I mean, come on. Like, this is ridiculous. Again, I don't know what it is, but it ain't that. You know, my mom is like Chris Sanders. She loves Judge Judy. And Judge Judy, she'll look at these people and say, she'll go, Madam, do I have stupid written across my forehead? That's how I feel when Elizabeth Brian Callahan the other day was like, probably not this week, but we think it's getting closer. We think it's getting closer. Then today, well, you know, we thought it was a 3-week injury. You know, the scans showed that it was a 3-week injury, so we didn't put him on IR because that's a 4-week injury because we look stupid now that we're putting him on IR today when we didn't put him on IR weeks ago. Blah, blah, blah. Again, I can't tell you what it is. Number one, I'm not qualified to be able to tell you what it is. And number two, again, I don't have access to this medical information. I just know when someone's constantly changing their story, and it sounds like the Titans are just constantly changing their story, when Sneed talks to the reporters and goes on the utmost defensive, one-word answers, and, oh, you know, we'll have to see. Sounds like somebody's got something to hide. And I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's what they're telling us. If you had an 8-year-old and their story shifted as much as the Titans has here, you wouldn't believe a word they tell you. So why would you listen to the Titans on this? I got a hard time believing this one. 615-737-1025. We'll do some phones next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Let's talk Fireball Whiskey. That's right. Time to ignite the night. It's a big weekend. We will be celebrating Sydney Bennington. That's Jordan Bennington's sister, by the way. We'll be celebrating her 35th birthday, and you know I'll be doing it with ice-cold Fireball cinnamon whiskey. Nothing goes down as smooth or tastes as great as Fireball whiskey, and there is no better way to ignite the night than to do so with ice-cold Fireball cinnamon whiskey. Ignite the night. Please be 21 years or older to do so. That's Fireball cinnamon whiskey.
Can you tell Titan fans, in regards to your need, that they have nothing to worry about?
Titans fans, I'm here to tell you that you don't have anything to worry about from the Jerry Sneed knee. The Jerry Sneed is going to go out there every practice, every game, and give you my all. Go back and watch the film. I gave everybody my all, no matter what was my knee condition that my knee was in. My knee is in great position. I know what to do to maintain my knee, or whatever I need to do. I got this end of my part. I'm just going out here and play ball. Just give Tennessee Titans fans and this organization all of me.
Well,
so the knee is not a problem.
Okay.
So they can start worrying about that.
Stop worrying. L'Jarius Sneed's knees are okay. And again, some people will say, but Jared, it's the quad. That's convenient. again, I don't buy the stories the Titans are telling. Now, that doesn't mean that it is the knee. I have no idea, and I have no way of knowing, and I'm not going to accuse them of that. But you have nothing to worry about. Every game, L'Jarius Sneed will be out there. Yeah, I don't think so. And I'm sure Julio Jones said that he was okay, too, after he got traded to the Titans. In fact, I know he did because I asked him about it. He said, I'll be ready to go, and then laughed about it. Yeah. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. One texter, and we've gotten a bunch of texts like this. The Chiefs are belly laughing at the Titans right now, saying, ha ha suckers. John says, the Chiefs fleeced the Titans. Think about this. Every pick that the Kansas City Chiefs have is at the end of the round because they're either winning the Super Bowl or they're playing in the Super Bowl, or at a bare minimum, they make it to the conference final. So their pick is no higher than 28th every year. You basically just gave them another second-round pick because your third-round pick is going to be at the top of the third round, and that's how the good teams take advantage of the bad teams. You got a fifth for DeAndre Hopkins. Woo! Which is basically a sixth because it'll be at the end of the round. Also, I want to address something in the YouTube chat because a lot of people are saying, well, Jared, the Titans would never, ever, ever lie when it comes to L'Jarius Sneed's health because they can't lie on the injury report or else they'll get in big trouble. NFL teams lie on the injury report all the time. There was an example 3 weeks ago where Nick Sirianni, the head coach of the Eagles, was answering questions during a press conference, said they held out Jalen Hurts because of an ankle injury from practice. The media then wanted to clarify because Jalen Hurts wasn't on the injury report for an ankle. And then the PR guy in the press conference wanted to clarify Jalen Hurts was held out of that Wednesday practice for rest. And Sirianni said, oh, yes. He was held out of it because of rest. Tom Brady played the entire end of the 2020 season when the Bucs won the Super Bowl. Tom Brady played it, I believe, with a torn MCL. Told everybody after the year, yeah, I played those last 9 weeks with a torn MCL. Tom Brady never once appeared on the injury report. It happens all the time. So this idea that, oh, we should take the Titans at their word because the Titans would never, and in the NFL, you never lie on that injury report. Again, Sirianni got caught lying about it 2 weeks ago. I mean, I had Gentry Hess to say the same thing to me a couple weeks ago, saying, well, I mean, I don't think the Titans would lie on the injury report. You can get in trouble for that. Kinda. But again, teams lie about that stuff all the time. 615-737-1025 here on our program. Let's go to Steven, who's up next on our program. Steven, thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Stillman? Yeah, this is the obvious answer, man. I mean, Derrick Henry went to Baltimore. Will Levis is not the answer. There's no doubt about that. But the Titans agree or disagree, but at least be 4-6, 5-5 with Derrick Henry. They could have beat the Jets, and they could have beat Chicago. Maybe could have beat Green Bay. I mean, that's how good Derrick Henry is. And he was here and dominated with a bad offensive line for years, man. So, unless you want me to hang on, that's all I got. But, I mean,
that's what you're mad about today is Derrick Henry's not on the Titans?
I could care less. I'm not from Tennessee. I'm just calling as a fan of the NFL.
I mean, I what is the point of calling in and waiting on hold to sit there and be like, I mean, they could be 4-6 with Derrick Henry today? Come on. One texter says the Titans are just so poorly run. L'Jarius Sneed hasn't played in over a month, and now they put him on IR. Absolutely laughable. Again, Brian Callahan said, guys, it was a quad bruise and a quad strain, and those take 3 weeks to heal. And IR is the mandatory minimum is 4 weeks for IR. So they couldn't have put him on IR because it was a 3-week thing. Come on, guys. Don't you believe everything the Titans tell you? That's why they didn't put him on IR. Again, I don't want to be... Ian, can I put a theory out there without accusing the Titans of doing this? But just saying I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that has happened?
I guess.
So we did the math. L'Jarius Sneed costs $1.47 million per week. That's the $25 million you've been paid divided by 17 games. Again, you can do your phony baloney cap stuff about, well, the signing bonus and prorated roster per game and all. I don't care about that. It's a $1.47 million per week, period. So Kalen Kaler at ESPN wrote a very good story a couple of months ago about injury premiums in the NFL and about how a smart team, the Green Bay Packers, continuously paid an injury premium on quarterback Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron Rodgers got hurt and he went to IR, the Packers would be able to claim the money on insurance and they would get paid back what they lost. On a $50 million quarterback, sounds pretty smart. The New York Jets, a dumb team, decided before last season, we don't need to pay the insurance on Aaron Rodgers. And you know what happened with Aaron Rodgers and his Achilles. It popped 4 plays into the season. $37 million down the drain. Teams take out injury premiums on players that either are likely to be injured or have big contracts for this exact reason. I'm sure the Titans didn't take out insurance on Jamal Adams because his contract was so meager, but on a big contract, especially one on a guy who's labeled as an injury risk, they'd be stupid not to take out an injury insurance premium on L'Jarius Sneed. Well, I don't know if you can collect if he's deactivated without paying, but I know, according to the Kalen Kaler article, I know you can collect if he is on IR. That's not no money out there at $1.47 million a week. I mean, again, we played the Chad Brinker cut of the AI cancer curing model. And Chad Brinker said, if we could save the owner $1 million or $2 million, that could be an absolute game changer. That can go get us another Jamal Adams. And so he may, again, let's say that this phony baloney quad thing is real and that I'm just a tin foil hat guy. If that's the case, then why wouldn't they try to see if it'll go another week? I mean, Kaharski came into the midday show or the morning show this week, and he was yelling and screaming about, if they don't need to put him on IR. Gabe Judy Lawley was active, and he didn't even play. He doesn't need to go on IR. So why put him on IR now? Because Kaharski said they don't even need the roster spot. So what's the point? So, again, I do wonder when we talk about, well, hold on. He didn't go to IR, and now he's going on IR? What are we doing? I do think that, again, insurance money is something that could be. I mean, I keep seeing crazy stuff. It's crazy. Texter says, if Ran gets fired but Chad stays, I think I'll just start pulling for the Texans. That comes from Dylan. I mean, that's what, again, I think that's what's most likely to happen at the end of the year. I think what's most likely to happen is that Ran Carthon gets fired. Chad Brinker becomes the decision maker for the Titans. There is no replacing Ran. Chad's the president of football operations. They don't hire someone underneath them. And it's Chad and Callahan going forward. But I would love to know when it comes to Shinobi Awuzie and L'Jarius Sneed, what did your big models tell you? Again, I'm not getting on you for Lloyd Cushenberry's injury. A torn Achilles is a torn Achilles. It happens. But Awuzie got hurt the first day of practice and has played in like 2 games. Sneed didn't practice and has missed pretty much the entire season. You can't brag about your injury prevention model, then go get somebody who's injured, and then say, well, don't blame the injury prevention model when that guy then gets hurt. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
Sneed will also go to IR tomorrow. Here's how this, just so I can be clear and transparent so you guys have an understanding of how this worked. As I said before, right, turned out, thought he had a quad bruise. Pretty significant quad bruise, but didn't get better very fast. Turns out after we did some scans on it, he had a pretty significant quad strain on top of that. Those things generally are a couple of weeks. Felt like we'd have a chance to get him back. Has not progressed. It's been complicated, more complicated than a normal strain would be. So the rest is the best thing for him at this point. Not ruling out a return for the end of the year, but the IR at this point makes the most sense for him. Take a couple weeks and try to get that quad right. So it's been sort of a up and down, back and forth injury for him, complicated. This is the best thing at this point to put him on the IR for the next 4 weeks, and we'll see where he's at. Again, not ruling out a return, but he will go on IR tomorrow.
That was Brian Callahan. And the only thing that surprises me, by the way, Brian Callahan says not ruling him out for the rest of the season. Let me go ahead. Ian, I'm ruling him out for the rest of the season. I don't think we're going to see L'Jarius Sneed come back on week 16 for a...
So he'll miss at Houston, at Washington, Jacksonville, Cincinnati for sure. That leaves at Indy, at Jacksonville versus Houston the last 3 games.
So that would put them at what? Let's say they win one of those games before they get to the second Indy game. So that would probably be Jacksonville next week at home, which they would win. So they'll be
at Washington first and then Jacksonville.
Oof. 3 and 10?
3 and...
At that point?
Yep. Maybe 11?
3 and 11. So L'Jarius Sneed's going to return at 3 and 11. I'll go ahead and rule him out. One texter says, Jared, the front office 100% listens to your show. Sneed has not been on IR. You say it's confusing why he hasn't been since he's missed 6 games, and the next day they put him on IR. Your common sense is pressuring them. I mean, I do think that the front office listens to the show, because what I've realized is that the people that hate the show listen the most, and if I worked in the Titans front office, I'd probably hate this show too. That being said, I do not think that the Titans put L'Jarius Sneed on IR because Jared Stillman kept saying, why aren't they putting him on IR? What I think is hysterical, though, is that Paul Kaharski on the morning show kept saying, he doesn't need to go on IR. Why do people get paid? He go on IR. They don't need the roster spot. Gabe Judy Lally didn't play. Wait a minute. And then they put him on IR. Paul, was that a bad decision by your friend Chad Brinker to put him on IR? Somebody help me. One texter says, if the Titans keep it up, they won't have many fans for their season opening new stadium. You know, I'm not going to say I'm worried about that. But if you were worried about that, L'Jarius Sneed's injury isn't going to be what should worry you about it. Sunday's game against the Vikings should be what worries you about it. You know, Gentry wrote it in the Tennessean, and I thought that this was probably one of the smarter things. Because what was crazy to me was the amount of people that were trying to almost accept why the Viking fans took over the stadium when they said, well, you know, Jared, Nashville's a very popular town to visit. The Nashville's been a popular town to visit since Ken Wisenhunt or Mike Munchak were the coach. We've never seen a takeover. You know, the longtime scribes of this team, PK, Johnny Glennon, those guys, they have never seen a takeover like that of a stadium, ever. And you're going to tell me that, well, you know, Nashville's a nice place to visit? And so Gentry wrote in the Tennessean, quote, the circumstances of a popular city and of NFL franchise histories have often explained the lack of a home field advantage for the Titans. Again, there's always been a lot of Steeler fans when they play the Steelers. Got it. That has happened plenty of times before, and it'll happen again, Gentry writes. But Sunday's loss? Nah. The reasons behind that one were largely self-inflicted, and the Titans know it. That was my favorite line of that column, which is a very well-written column by Gentry Estes, because, again, the texter says, if the Titans keep going at this rate, they won't have any fans for that new stadium. And here's Gentry saying, you can make up whatever excuse you want to make up for why all the Viking fans were there on Sunday, but the real reason is because this team absolutely sucks. And because the fans have absolutely zero excitement to watch this team play, optimism to believe what this team is doing. And I get it. Clay Travis has kind of gone super political. And I'm a sports guy, and so I don't like, you know, constant politics all the time. Like I was talking to somebody today, and I was talking about, you know, like these like sports social issues. Like, what do you think about the kneeling during the national anthem? I don't think people want to hear us talk about that on the radio. I think the same people that care about that actually care about what the Cowboys should do with Mike McCarthy instead. So I don't think there's like a market for that like anti-woke sports genre of talk. But that's Clay's thing now. But Clay Travis is a Titan fan, and he was a very good sports radio host when he was doing sports in Nashville. And Clay tweeted out after the game the other day, he said, where's the hope? Quarterback stinks. Coach looks in over his head. GM's picks haven't been very good. Where's the hope? And that is how I feel. And I think there are a lot of Titan fans that feel that way about where is the hope for this team? Kevin from Union City says, I really feel for Brian Callahan. I feel like the GM should be answering questions about IR and things like that. So our midday show today, Ian, did you hear their idea, their invention? And I love them. I do. Derek, Willie, Adam, I love you. Did you hear what their invention today was? What they think will be great for communication issues around the Titans?
Oh, Fisher?
To bring back Jeff Fisher, but in a non-decision-making role. So Jeff Fisher connects with the fans by talking to the fans, but he's not the coach, and he's not the GM, and he's not making any decisions. And I heard that, and I'm like, well, I mean, they got PR people. Like, they've got people that do that communicate things that are not in decision-making positions. That exists. And just because Jeff Fisher gets up there and says it, I mean, people want to know, like, so are you guys planning to draft a quarterback next year? Or, like, is this a rebuild? Or is this well, if Jeff Fisher's not the one making the decision of whether or not you're rebuilding, then who cares what Jeff Fisher thinks? And if Jeff Fisher's paid by the team, it's just going to be some sunshine pumped from the team anyways. So that I didn't totally get. I mean, I understand the theory, but I have a hard time totally believing that. But I do understand when you tell me, when you say, hey, all this different stuff, for the Titans and the Brian Callahan shouldn't be up there answering all these questions. I don't disagree with that. And I heard them talking today about, hey, the GM should be wanting to talk more, and he doesn't. 615-737-1025 here on the program. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. Coming up next, I will say this about Sunday's game, because we haven't talked a lot about the Texan game, and we haven't. There is something about Sunday's game that I do think, I think there's some juice to it. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. The big Titans news today, L'Jarius Sneed on IR with that super secret quad injury that Brian Callahan said today was a quad bruise and a quad strain. Has missed the last 6 weeks, and he'll miss the next 4. Says he's not ruling out that he's done for the season, but again, I have a hard time believing L'Jarius Sneed will be back for week 16 in this really exciting season. So the thing everybody wants to know that nobody actually knows the answer to is how Amy Adams Strunk feels about all of this. Nobody knows. I don't know. You don't know. Ian doesn't know. Maybe she's fine with it, saying, hey, I told everybody this offseason, go pump some sunshine so we can sell the most expensive PSLs during the summer. And then if we stink, we stink, and it's okay. It's probably not what happened, but again, I don't know. But there is one thing that I do know. I know she cares about Sunday's game against the Texans. I don't know if Brian Callahan's on the hot seat or not. In fact, I don't even really know what defines the hot seat anymore. I always think the hot seat is if people are talking about your job and you feel it. That's the hot seat. I mean, when we say things like, is this coach on the hot seat? I mean, sometimes it's obvious. Like Doug Peterson is on the hot seat, but there's nothing he can do to get off the hot seat. He's getting fired. That's not really a hot seat for me. To me, the hot seat is, man, it's getting hot. You better do something about that. So I have no idea if Brian Callahan is on the hot seat or not. I have no idea. Could be, couldn't be. I mean, again, he's clearly feeling the pressure if he's telling the CBS broadcasters that he's having to sit down with his kids because people at school are talking about how he might get fired. So I've actually met Brian Callahan's kids before, and I hate hearing that. He might not be on the hot seat. Amy may look at this and say, look, this is not Brian Callahan's fault. And I'm not going to hold him accountable for something that's not his fault. Again, I don't know how she feels. But I do know this. If you want to make sure that you're not on the hot seat, go find a way to win on Sunday. Because if you can beat the Houston Texans, that might change something. Again, I don't know how Amy feels. Maybe she's going to double down on this because the last person who usually realizes a bad decision is the person who made it. So maybe she'll say after the year, no, Ran and Brinker and Callahan are exactly where they should be. Double down. But he can do himself a lot of good with a win on Sunday because this Sunday against the Houston Texans is not the same as every other Sunday. For starters, we know that for the ownership of the Titans, their biggest rival, it's the Texans. They're from Houston. They live in Houston. And they've got the middle finger from the city of Houston. Bud Adams got his butt kicked by a Texas boot on his way out. Floyd used to talk about how they wanted, I think, $100 million to build a new stadium. Houston said no. They ended up paying $1 billion for a new stadium 6-7 years later. Secondly, Hannah McNair, who I think her title is vice president, but her real title is owner's wife. Hannah McNair takes shots at the Titans every chance she gets, including yesterday saying, quote, we've taken Houston back and, quote, they're just the Titans now. This matters to the Titans brass. The Texans and not getting embarrassed by the Texans matters to the Titans brass. If you're Brian Callahan and you find a way to win on Sunday, that will do you a lot of good after a Sunday where the Vikings took over your stadium and we had to sit here on Monday celebrating a moral victory. Did you win? No, but the refs screwed us. So we can feel a little better. Now, do I think the Titans can win on Sunday against the Texans? Probably not. Is Brian Callahan on the hot seat? With this owner, who knows? But what I do know is this owner and her family hate the Texans. And they hate losing to the Texans. It is personal for ownership with Houston. And I have no doubt that losing to the Texans in the Oiler throwbacks last year when the Texans were playing Case Keenum at quarterback was a huge part in Mike Vrabel's firing, even if they never said that. So whatever tricks Brian Callahan's got in the bag, you know, the triple reverse double pass option, whatever. We're going to run a play where Jaquan Jackson lines up at quarterback. Will Levis lines up at tight end. We're going to hand it to Tony Pollard, who flips it behind his back to Levis, who throws it down the field to Ridley. We've been holding that in the bag all year. Take it out on Sunday. Sunday would be a good time to pull something out of your rear end. Because so far, by my count, the Titans have played 4 good teams this year. Detroit, Buffalo, the Chargers, and Minnesota. Detroit, Buffalo, and the Chargers were all complete and total blowouts. The Vikings game was close. And I won't say all will be forgiven if they beat the Texans, but I can promise you that Monday's phone call that Brian Callahan says he has every week with the owner will be much, much, much better if they can celebrate a win over the aren't really as good as I thought they would be this season Texans, especially in her hometown. So I don't know what the line on the game is, and the Titans are, 1-9 against the spread this year, matching the amount of times that they didn't cover last year. But again, if you can find a way to avoid getting embarrassed on Sunday, you better do it. Because not all these Sundays are the same. And not even the embarrassments are the same. I can tell you right now, getting embarrassed by the Detroit Lions when they're owned by Sheila Ford Hamp, who is Amy Adams Strunk's good friend, probably a lot more angering of the brass than getting blown out by the Chargers, who, again, there's no relationship between the Titans and the Chargers and Harbaugh and the Titans. And there's nothing personal with the Chargers. Nobody hates the Chargers. Not even the Rams, who share the same building, hate the Chargers. Not even the teams in their own division hate the Chargers. Nobody hates the Chargers. So, again, this Sunday, I don't know how you're going to do it because the Texans are pretty much better than you at every single position. And the Texans can rush the quarterback. And you're going to be starting Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, a.k.a. PT at right tackle this week. And PT has allowed 7 sacks this season. So, again, I don't know how you're going to do it. And I don't know if Brian Callahan is technically on the hot seat or not on the hot seat. I have no idea. There are some people that keep saying, no, Jared, this is a planned tank, and Amy is fine with all of this, and everybody's coming back, and they're in lockstep, and Amy knows it. And I have a hard time thinking that Amy's okay with lighting $25 million of her cash on fire in L'Jarius Sneed and a 3rd-round pick. I have a hard time believing Amy was okay with Malik Willis walking into Nissan Stadium and turning into Michael Vick. I have a hard time believing that Amy was fine with getting her hat handed to her by her friend Sheila Ford Hamp and the Lions. I have a hard time believing that Amy Adams Strunk looked out, saw the sea of purple in the stands on Sunday and said, yeah, it's okay. But again, I don't know. And with Amy, even when they tell you, you don't know. They told Diana Rossini on Thanksgiving last year, Vrabel was safe no matter what, and they fired him 2 days after the season. Apparently, the only person who does know how this owner feels is Mike Mularkey. And boy, did he make her look bad. So, again, if you're Brian Callahan, I know you try to win every game. And so far, your trying has not resulted in a lot of winning. I got it. And I know you bawled your eyes out after that Patriot win because you had to have it, which probably does make me think he's on the hot seat. But this one's personal to her. It's actually kind of funny to me because I don't care about the Texans. Do I like the Texans? No. But I don't hate the Texans. I hate the Ravens. Jacksonville, I don't really have a problem with. Though I look at Jacksonville as even for the Titans, I look at Jacksonville as a beneath me franchise. Everything about them is dirty and gross and just ugh, Jacksonville. Indy, I don't like Indy only because Indy thinks all that success they had for 20 years was because of them. It's not. It's because of Peyton Manning. And you only won one Super Bowl with it. So, whoa. So I guess I don't like Indy, but I really don't like Baltimore. I don't care about the Texans. The Texans do not matter to me. But they matter to her. And again, I don't know how she feels. And even when she tells you how she feels, just like she did with Malarkey, just like she did with Vrabel, she might be lying. But it will tell you this. She does care about winning this game on Sunday. Probably would still lay the Texans minus 7.5. 615-737-1025. Corey Curtis joins us next on the program. As always, Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Let me tell all the fine folks out there, while I have your attention, this probably be a good idea to do some of this. This week's Nashville's Best Deals Bavarian Beer House. Nashville's only authentic German beer hall, a place full of fun, food, music, and most importantly, beer. Enjoy traditional German beer, brats, giant pretzels, and more in their expansive beer hall and garden. Head to thegamenashville.com/deals now to get a $50 gift card for only $25 to Bavarian Beer House while supplies last. And be sure to tune into our college football game of the week tomorrow at 11 a.m. as Indiana takes on Ohio State, presented by Twin Peaks. Take your tailgate to Twin Peaks, home of 29-degree drafts and wall-to-wall sports. Reminder, we've got some Jelly Roll tickets to give away later on the show, so be listening for your opportunity to do that. And tune into 99 or 94.9 The Fan tomorrow for Vandy football, presented by Prince's Hot Chicken. The Commodores will take on LSU with pregame at 5 o'clock. Kickoff at 6:45. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at thegamenashville.com. Corey Curtis, News 2, joins us on the program. Corey, your reaction to the news, L'Jarius Sneed has been placed on IR, will miss the next 4 games, has missed the last 5 games. That'll be at least 9 total. Callahan says he might come back for week 16. Wink, wink. What do you make of that?
This is weird. I mean, this is weird, like Vic Beasley not showing up. This is weird, like Isaiah Panda Wilson just not wanting to be a football player. And I'm not saying he doesn't want to be a football player, doesn't want to play, but it's weird because I don't understand how the diagnosis was so far off on a timeline. And I know the human body is a funky thing, but it's disappointing. It's strange. And you know, their lack of putting him on IR earlier is just really weird.
So I'm going to ask you this, and I know you hate when I do this, but
Right.
I'm going to ask you this, which is, do you believe the Titans when it comes to L'Jarius Sneed and this whole,
No,
it was
I
a
don't.
helmet to the quad
I don't.
against the goal? Thank you.
No, I mean, look, I'd like to. I don't think Brian Callahan's a liar by any means, but I've never gone through in 20 years of covering the NFL something quite like this that I can remember. Can you?
Where it felt like somebody was lying straight up?
Well, no, just where like a guy, he said, look, I mean, we've known guys who've had hamstrings and it's going to be a few more weeks, but
Sure.
never like a guy who, I mean, look, when he didn't go on IR, it told you he was going to be back in 3 or 4 weeks. That's what it told you. And what are we on like now, week 7?
Well, Callahan said today, I laughed my ass off when I heard this cut. Callahan said today that they originally thought that it was a quad bruise and a quad strain, and the level of strain that they saw was a 3-week injury. And I'm like, that's convenient.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not comparing myself to L'Jarius Sneed. I've strained my quad, and it hurts, and you cannot run, and you cannot function. And I understand, if he's hurt, and so if he's hurt, he can't play. I get that, but I'm with you. Where how do you say it's a 3-week strain, and here we are a month and a half later, and now it's going on injured reserve, so he's had at least a month more. I mean, that's just it. Look, if it's not a lie, it's somebody straight up whiffed on what their duties were.
Very interesting take. May have to reuse that one. Corey Curtis here on our program. Is there anything different about L'Jarius Sneed than the other guys that were brought in that have been injured? Awuzie's hurt. Cushenberry's hurt, torn Achilles. I mean, we saw Cushenberry walking off the field, and it was like, yeah, he's hurt. Is there something different given all of the talk about Sneed's medicals when they acquired him, given the fact that he was kind of the crown jewel in terms of money and the draft pick and everything else to acquire him, of what his injury and this whole Firkakta situation represents as far as the Titans' offseason approach and the money they spent and what they did? Does this reflect any differently on Ran Carthon and Chad Brinker than the other injuries that they've had from the new guys?
Well, I mean, look, he was supposed to be the cornerstone, right? I mean, so number one, yes, it's different because he was the prize piece, like you talked about. And, not only is he not playing, but when he did play, he wasn't that player that everyone wanted to see. Would you say that's accurate?
Agreed. Okay.
So, I mean, he wasn't terrible, but he wasn't top 5 corner in the NFL. That's not what we saw from him. And, with the history of the knee that came with the signing and with the summer where we didn't see him on the practice field all summer until training camp, it raises questions about his health, his durability in the guy that you're bringing in. So that's another thing that makes it, certainly different. And the third one that makes it different is he finished that game. Yeah, he didn't leave the game early. He finished.
He made
the
the last defensive tackle.
Yeah, and so, that was the other one. He is, how how is he able to finish the game? And now he's hurt so badly, he's out 2.5 months, 3 months.
Corey Curtis with us here from News 2. So what's your take on the Titans putting Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT, back at right tackle?
It means they're desperate, Jared. They don't have anything else. And there's apparently nothing else on planet Earth that appeals to them more. I mean, I don't know how many. I imagine, like, remember the old, like, Montgomery Ward catalogs? You know, you page through and you order your clothes out of it. I imagine a catalog of tackles and guards and just paging through, you know, no. I mean,
they got
I
the
just
guess on
can't
Isaiah
imagine.
Prince, and he can't even get lined up right.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, we've heard for years that the level of offensive line play was a problem in the NFL. This is damning that they can't find someone. I mean, look, MPF has obviously lost his confidence. His play has obviously dropped down from whatever level it was at before, which was more acceptable than it is now. But that they can't find somebody. And look, John Ojukwu is what he is. He does not have very good lateral movement. This is a nightmare of a matchup for the Titans, and for them to basically acknowledge you're putting this guy out there because we have no choice. And, Brian Callahan said it on Monday. He's never been through something like this before. Does not breed confidence that he thinks he's going to see a heck of a lot better from Nicholas Petit-Frere in this one.
Yeah. Corey, have you been encouraged by Will Levis the last 2 weeks? Do you think it means anything long-term?
Sure. Absolutely. I think it looks like the game has slowed down for him a little bit. I think in a game where he was under duress a lot, he didn't make any crazy decisions. Did he miss some that he could have made? Probably. But I think every quarterback does miss some that they could make. I think he's looked more under control. And I think he's gotten some of his confidence back. I think that's the biggest thing, that you get a chance to see what he can really do if he's more confident. Does that mean I think he's a long-term answer? No, not yet. I need to see more. I need to see him build on it, but it certainly is a step in the right direction for him and for the team.
What do we make of the fact that Levis can play well and they score 13 to 17 points? Levis can play like absolute ass and they score 17 points. Mason Rudolph can go in there for Levis and they score 17 points. What does that tell us?
It tells us it's not all on the quarterback. It tells us that they make a lot of mistakes that cost them points, whether it be negative yardage runs, but especially the pre-snap penalties. Those are just absolute killers. And let's face it, this team has had points taken off the boards by the Zebras. There are a number of games where they could have been in the 20s if some touchdowns had just been allowed to be touchdowns.
Yeah, but if you don't get lined up right, I can't blame the referees for that one.
Yeah, I get that. I've seen the play. I think somebody had a bad bowl of Cheerios in the morning and called through that flag.
Corey Curtis with us on the program. If you were doing an interview in another city, so let's say Corey Curtis, the sports director at Channel 2 in Nashville, WKRN, joins us now on the program to preview the Titans and the Texans. And they asked you the question, is Brian Callahan, Ran Carthon, are they on the hot seat? What would you say?
I would say with the amount of money that's going out to Mike Vrabel and John Robinson, it would be difficult for me to believe that they would be ready to make, that kind of move. Do I think that there could be some tinkering within things after the season? Sure I do. But I just don't know that they're ready to pull the plug at this point. I certainly think it's been disappointing. I certainly think that there's some frustration, and I certainly think that that if they don't get better next year, then there's definitely the seat's really, really hot. I just think year one is tough, and I know there have been teams that have made changes, in year one before. And that's, if you think people are grossly incompetent or not. I don't think Brian Callahan is grossly incompetent. I think the organization has done some things that don't make a heck of a lot of sense, particularly your favorite spot, at right tackle. But I don't know how much of that is on him. I don't know how much of that's on Bill, and I don't know how much of that's on Ran and Chad.
By the way, next year when you do these interviews before the preseason games, you may have to hook
Yeah.
whoever the coach is. You may have to hook them up to a polygraph when you sit down with them, just so that we get the, because I really want to know, like, they looked you in the eye and said, we believe in PT, but I really want to know.
Yeah.
With that, it is a Fireball Hot Take Friday. What's your hot take this week?
You know what? You may disagree with me. I don't know. But I think that NFL GMs, if you're going to take that job, you have to understand the big boy job that it is. And I know they don't have a long leash or as long as they used to, but they're going to have to knuckle up and stop writing bad quarterback contracts. And I'm saying this on the heels of Daniel Jones, yes, which we all knew was a bad contract when they signed it. But when I look at the deals for Trevor Lawrence and the deals for, Dak Prescott and some of these guys who have not achieved at the highest level, getting the highest dollars, at some point you need to say no. And you say, you know what? We will move on because you're not Joe Burrow. You're not Patrick Mahomes. You're not Matthew Stafford. When you are them, we will pay you like them, but you're not them. And I'm not saying they don't deserve to. With Dak, I wouldn't have given him $60 million. I would not.
Because I think there's a big difference between Dak and Daniel Jones.
There is a big difference between Dak, but he's also making $60 million. If he's only willing to play for $60 million, then he could go play for somebody else. How many NFC championships has Dak been to?
0.
Thank you very much. What has Dak's number one problem been?
Doesn't win in the playoffs.
And turnovers.
Sure.
Massive
I think
amounts
Dak's
of turnovers.
See, I guess where I disagree with you.
But see, that's it. He's fine. But is fine $60 million? No, it's not.
Here's where I guess
Patrick
I would disagree
Mahomes
with you.
Make sense.
To me, it's the market. And I don't, Daniel Jones is a different discussion. Even Trevor Lawrence, different discussion. Because they didn't have to give him the $55 million when they gave him the $55 million. They chose to give him that million.
Him.
But, they could have picked up his fifth-year option and they could have tagged him twice.
Yeah.
But
they did. You know what the Jags did? They hoped. They hoped if they paid him, he would become that guy. And we always
get the
say,
Dak thing, though. Because let's say Dak was a free agent at the end of the year.
Yeah.
You don't think the Titans would be willing to pay $60 million to bring Dak Prescott in?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. But I don't know if I would. I mean, look, quarterbacks have to be the guy that can get the team over the hump. They just do. I mean, that's what we talked about with Ryan Tannehill all the time. Good.
But see, those guys
really
just don't exist.
Yeah, they do. They do exist.
There are
do
4 of them on the planet.
Go to the Super Bowl. Yeah, exactly. And you know what? The guys that aren't one of the 4 on the planet don't get paid like the 4 on the planet. And, I know you could say it's the market. Reset the market. Say no.
So just cross your arms and say, well, the Minnesota Vikings did that. The Minnesota Vikings crossed their arms and they said no, and they signed Sam Darnold over Kirk Cousins, and it's working out for them.
Yeah, it is working out for him. And you know what? How much are they paying Sam Darnold?
$10 million.
Oh, that's not 60.
No,
that's not 60.
No,
and you know what?
Will pay Sam probably 50 this year.
Yep, and you know what? It won't be the Vikings because they're going to go with J.J. McCarthy.
We shall see. Corey Curtis, News 2, as always, on our program. Corey, great stuff. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. Talk to you later. Have a great weekend.
Yep, Corey Curtis joining us as always. So speaking of front offices and hot seats, and it sounded like Corey said that they're not on the hot seat. If he was sports director Corey Curtis from WKRN in Nashville, if he was that. But the one excuse, the one reason why I'm told they shouldn't be on the hot seat, I just don't believe in this. And I think the team you're playing this week gives you an example of what actually could be. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. So when I said we were giving away Jelly Roll tickets later in the show, I wonder if you thought, that means I should listen at 4:30 or at 5 o'clock, or maybe you should be listening now. Be caller 5-615-737-1025, and you will win a pair of tickets to see Jelly Roll live at Bridgestone Arena. Good luck on this one. Tuesday, November 26th. I have been to the Jelly Roll concert, and I will tell you, it is worth the hype. So enjoy. Contest is supplied by Chiba Hut Subs, serving up dank food and chill vibes. Now open in Donaldson. That's Chiba Hut Subs and 1025 The Game.
I'm saying that in terms of why she won't. That's why I'm predicting she won't, because I'm not saying, again, you continue to twist that. I'm just saying that's why I don't think she will. You
because
get it?
she did her homework?
No, because she understands that perception. That's why I'm predicting she won't. I'm not saying that's why she can't. If she thinks they're bad, do it. That's fine.
Do you think they're bad?
I think that right now the results aren't great. I wouldn't fire them until another offseason. I know that's just an incredibly controversial take.
That was Joe Rexrode this morning when I was on with Robbie and Rexrode. And Joe says every time this comes up, Joe, do you think the front office should be fired? Now, I'll give him credit because he has said multiple times the answer is no. But every time he does this, I mean, it would look so incredibly stupid if she fired them again after all the things that she's done. It would look so incredibly bad. And if these guys are incompetent, she should have done her homework, so she should know that they're not incompetent. That's his logic. That she should know that they're not incompetent because she hired them. Well, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but what she don't know could fill up a room right now. In terms, it could fill up the new stadium right now. So I keep hearing this whole can't fire them. And it's never about performance. It's never like, well, you can't fire them because they're doing too good of a job. It's never that. It's always, it's either not fair to fire them. It's either Amy should know that they're good because she hired them, which is, again, I think ridiculous. And then there is, Jared, you can't fire everyone all the time because it would look bad. Do you want to be the Cleveland Browns, Jared? First of all, the Cleveland Browns have had the same head coach and GM since 2020. It's almost 2025. So it's not like they fired the coach every year. They went through a stretch where they did that, and it was bad. But again, can I ask a question? Can I be the Texans? Can I be the 49ers? Again, the finger wagging is, do you want to be the Cleveland Browns? The Cleveland Browns have 3 wins. The Tennessee Titans have 2 wins. You are the Cleveland Browns. Do you want to be the Carolina Panthers? You are the Carolina Panthers. Again, firing a staff or firing a GM or firing an operation 1 year into a management change or management reorganization or management restructuring or management, it's not unheard of. In fact, the Titans did it last year. And the Titans basically did it the year before because she extended John Robinson and Mike Vrabel and then fired. So it's not like it's unheard of. But again, whenever we talk about how we can't fire the Titans because the performance is bad, because it'll look bad and we don't want to be the Cleveland Browns, we never mention the Texans, who you're about to play on Sunday, who's going to win the division this year. Would the Texans be this good if they had kept Lovie Smith or David Culley? Again, they changed their management structure and immediately realized that Bill O'Brien shouldn't be GM, and they fired him. Then they hired David Culley. They fired him. They brought in Lovie Smith. They fired him. Stephen A. Smith said on TV after they fired Lovie Smith, black coaches need not apply for the Houston Texans because he was so mad at them. It doesn't get worse than that. They hired DeMeco Ryans, and now they're good. Divisional round of the playoffs last year, and again, they're not as good as they should be this year, but they're good enough. What about the 49ers? The 49ers had a Robinson-Vrabel type power struggle or Carthon-Vrabel, whatever you want to call it, between Trent Baalke, who sucks, and Jim Harbaugh, who does not. They chose Baalke. That was a mistake. They hired Jim Tom Sula to be the head coach. He farted during his press conferences and lasted 1 year. They fired him. The next year, they hired Chip Kelly. After 1 year, they fired him. And boy, did Jed York, the owner, get it. It is considered a legendary press conference. If you go back to it when Jed York said the reason why he has confidence that he'll go get the right guys are because I'm the owner and the owner doesn't get fired, period. Jed York said at the time, quote, "My vision of Trent and Chip working together, I think it's clear that Trent probably has more of a defensive mind pairing Balky with an offensive-minded guy, having those guys be partners, but the marriage didn't work. I should have probably seen it. It's easy to play revisionist history, but we are who we are. That's why we're cleaning the slate, and we're reestablishing the culture. They brought in Kyle Shanahan. So for everybody out there that finger wags me and tells me that you can't fire the GM, you can't fire the coach, you can't clean house, same people that told me last year I couldn't clean house. I wanted to clean house. You can't fire a general manager after 1 year, so I have to promote him because that's what they did. Thank you for signing Andre Dillard. Here's a promotion. So you can do that. But you can't fire him after 1 year. I wanted to clean house last year. Wasn't allowed to do it. Now I'm not allowed to do it either because if I do it, I'll be the Cleveland Browns. Again, you are the Cleveland Browns. Why can't I be the Texans? Why can't I be the 49ers? Why can't I do what Jed York did right there? Which was, I thought this was going to work. I should have seen it. I didn't. But now we're wiping the slate clean. Nobody ever says that, and I don't get it. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. 615-737-1025 here on our program if you want to weigh in. Stillman and Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday, 1025-1063 the game. And let me tell all the fine folks to tune in. Be sure to tune in when it comes to Vandy women's basketball tonight on 1021 The Ville. That's right. The Commodores will be at Memorial Gym taking on Samford. Tip-off is at 6:30. Pregame begins at 6:15. So get excited about that. And tomorrow, tune into 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville for MTSU football, where the Blue Raiders will take on New Mexico State with kickoff at 1:30. Pregame starts at noon. MTSU football coverage on 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville, presented by Sloan's Motorcycle and ATV. Stillman and Company 1025, The Game. Be sure to join the Nashville Predators tomorrow for a special 6 o'clock puck drop as they welcome back to Smashville Hockey Hall of Famers David Poyle and Shea Weber. There will be a ceremonial puck drop ahead of the game. The coverage begins at 5 o'clock on 1025 The Game and at the Game Nashville app. And again, that's a special 6 o'clock puck drop time, not the traditional 7. So I got to say something that I honestly want to say this in the most respectful way possible. I'm going to say this, Ian, Chris Sanders style.
Okay.
I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful because I respect it. But if the Predators lose tomorrow, I'm probably out on the season. Like, I think that tomorrow night, if they beat the Winnipeg Jets, the best team in the NHL, if they beat the Jets tomorrow night, to me, it is not a, we're back, baby! It's not that. But it's more like a stay of execution if they are to win the Winnipeg Jet game tomorrow. But I pulled up the Athletics power rankings today. Ian, you want to take a guess where the Predators rank in the Athletics power rankings?
29?
32. Dead freaking last. And apparently, as part of the power rankings, they graded every team. The Predators, one guy gave them an X for a grade. I don't even know that that's a grade. The other guy gave them an F. An F! Nobody gives Fs in sports media ever. It's like our education system. Nobody gets C's anymore. They all get A's. Because if not, the parents will call the principal, and they don't want that, so A. And in sports media, you'll never see Mel Kiper Jr. give a team an F for their draft. And right now, the Predators are getting an F for their season. And I don't know what the problem is. And deep down inside, they don't know what the problem is either. And that is an issue in and of itself. It could be that this new system with Andrew Burnett just hasn't clicked. It could be that Barry Trotz did invest in guys that are over the hill. It could be any number of things. But Thanksgiving is less than a week away. And U.S. Thanksgiving is traditionally a very important line of demarcation when it comes to the NHL season. And some people will say, well, if you're not in the playoffs at U.S. Thanksgiving, the odds of making the playoffs, are XYZ. If you're in last place on Thanksgiving, that can't be a good sign. But Jared, the 2019 St. Louis Blues, I know. It's happened before. That does not mean that it will happen again. And so I don't think the coach should be fired. I do want to know if there really is an explanation for why this thing has gone so haywire. And I know that if they lose on Saturday, they'll say, well, we still are in the mix. We just have to win. I think today Sean Henry said on the midday show, he said 6 out of 10 games. It'll be 7 out of every 10 games the rest of the way if they lose tomorrow, whatever. But for me, the idea that this team will figure it out and there will be enough time on the schedule to be able to turn it around, I just don't necessarily see that. And I'd love to be wrong. I mean, again, I hope they win tomorrow so we don't have to write off the season. But, I mean, I would love to be wrong. They lose tomorrow. And, okay, guys, I mean, look, I wished it would be better. I expected it to be better. It's not better, but I'm writing off the season. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think we should start talking about tanking so that they can get the number 1 pick, because I think the number 1 pick is, Ian, supposedly pretty good this year.
I think so. I'm not
like,
sure.
He's not Bedard quality.
No, I haven't heard anything.
Celebrini quality.
I haven't heard anything crazy like that. No.
I think he plays at BC or something like that. So, hey, let's get the number 1 pick. Let's see if he can be your Patrick Kane. Let's go from there. Like, that is what I believe. If you lose tomorrow, that's how my mindset's going to be. And I'm not going to say quit. I'm not going to say, but it will turn into what Barry talks about getting some of these young players up here. Like, I know they love Luke Shin, for instance. Luke Shin, he can't skate worth a crap, but he's a serial winner out of the lineup. Put Willsby in. Put whoever in. Scarbini in. Put whoever from Milwaukee, bring them up. You're in. Because I know what Luke Shin is and what he's not. So, again, I don't think I've been making excuses for the Predators, though the Boohoo Titans crew in the YouTube chat will argue that. But I haven't given up. Last Friday, they got shut out by Calgary, and for me, that was a very big, they might be toast this year moment. They really might be. I hated the game on Wednesday night. Hated it. Because even though it's like, gosh, we played a great first period, but we didn't have anything to show for it, but that's what losers say. Well, I like the way we played in the first period. And I can only do that for so long. And again, it's not like you're approaching U.S. Thanksgiving and you're 1 point out of a playoff spot. You're in last place. You're 32nd on the power rankings. But there is something about tomorrow night's game that I actually do feel if you can win. And again, I'm not saying we're back, baby. But I am saying, hey, there might be a little something here, is by beating the best team in the NHL, which is what the Winnipeg Jets are. If you beat the Winnipeg Jets, you can say, hey, we got together on the road trip, we came out, and we beat this team, and whatever. Like, you can at least take that as a positive to try to spring you forward with the last week of these games before Thanksgiving. And what do they play, 4 games next week? Because I believe, Ian, if I'm not mistaken, they play Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday.
I believe that is correct. Yep.
You win Saturday, take that positive momentum. Now, what they've done this year is they win a game, like they'll win Saturday, and then they'll lose Monday. But this time, you win Saturday, then you win Monday, you win Wednesday, okay. On we go. That would get me, the 3 would get me a little close to, okay, maybe they're back, baby. But tomorrow would just be a stay of execution. Maybe it's too early, but again, I remember the Houston Astros in 2004, 2005. They were horrible at the All-Star break each year. And they ended up making it to Game 7 of the NLCS one year, and they made it to the World Series the next year. And it was like, boy, the Astros in the second half with Phil Garner. That's the exception, not the rule. So if they don't win tomorrow, it's going to be hard for me to keep doing this game of, well, you know what? They can make it now. They just need to win this one, and they need to. No. We've done far too much of that. Well, maybe they can turn it around here. And tomorrow for me, you're 32nd in the power rankings. Tomorrow for me is and I promise you the other team, Winnipeg, will not be playing like this. They're playing tonight. Connor Hellebuyck is starting in net, so he's not going to play tomorrow. So it's not going to be an everything on the line game for the Jets. It should be an everything on the line game for you. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. The big news, L'Jarius Sneed, the crown jewel of the Titans free agent bonanza. And this one cost him a 3rd-round pick. The crown jewel on IR with his mysterious quad helmet injury. Coming up next, the reality that I hate to say, but it's the truth, whether you want to admit it or not. And I think a lot of you are starting to see my viewpoint a little bit more, and I'll explain why. We'll do it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. On a Fireball Hot Take Friday, you heard in Ian's update, L'Jarius Sneed has been placed on IR. Sneed has missed the previous 5 games with a quad injury. He will for sure miss the next 4, and he will be eligible to return week 16 for the Titans. And Ian and I surmise that at best, the Titans may be, 3-11 at that point? So it probably wouldn't make a lot of sense for L'Jarius Sneed to get ramped up and back out there on the football field. $25 million in cash for L'Jarius Sneed this year. 5 games, 5 very not so good games. And he was the crown jewel of the free agent bonanza that the Titans had this offseason. We'll probably always remember this offseason, even after he's long gone, as the winter of let Ran cook. Ran Carthon will be gone for 5 years, just the way we still talk about Ken Wisenhunt, and we'll be talking about, remember, let Ran cook. I try to get a pulse for the fans, and the last thing I ever want to do, whether it's in an interpersonal relationship, whether it's in a professional relationship, or whether it's with me talking to you, the last thing I want to do is project my feelings onto you. I think we see this far too often, where an opinion haver like me will take my opinion and say, well, so-and-so's got to be thinking because, no, that's what I think. But I also do feel like being a Titan fan, being from here, living here now, middle-aged, I think I do kind of have the pulse of the town. And I feel like this might be the final straw for a lot of you in Ran Carthon. Ran Carthon was hired, and there was a lot of optimism, including from me. I remember Ran Carthon's opening press conference. I was impressed. I even enjoyed the line he had about Golden State Warriors football when I asked him how important running the ball was. And he said, yeah, I mean, it's cool to play Golden State Warrior football, but who wins in December and January and February? Teams that run the ball. Knowing that your team had Derrick Henry, I was like, thank God. Gave him a chance on Andre Dillard. But I learned pretty quickly that I didn't think Ram was up to the job. Many people will say that it was my bruised ego because he didn't call me back on the Kevin Byard thing. My issue with that was that's the general manager's job. It's the general manager's job to try to keep situations from becoming bad things. It's the general manager's job to field tough questions from the media after they make controversial draft choices, like Will Levis and Tajay Spears without an ACL. It's the general manager's job to express a vision to the fans when you trade away a star player like Kevin Byard. And I didn't see things like that happening. There were a lot of half-truths and bold-faced lies that I started to pick up on. Ran Carthon at the Combine last year said that he wasn't sure what they were going to do with Bud Dupree because he didn't know Bud Dupree. Later that day, they cut Bud Dupree. Did Ran have time to get to know Bud? Probably not. It's hard for me to believe that. Ran Carthon told everybody he and Vrabel were best buddies. There's no problem here. Said that firing Vrabel was tough on his family. Again, year of the operation saying, look, I think it's a clean house. This collaboration's not working. Vrabel's gone stale. It's time to start over, bring in somebody who knows football to run the organization and go from there. And boy, did I get a lot of pushback. You can't fire a general manager after 1 year. Everybody kept saying, this will be different, Jared. We'll have a top pick. We've got a quarterback we like, and we'll have $100 million in cap space. Titans fans were dreaming up a scenario where they went out and signed T. Higgins to come in here and save the franchise. I remember it all like it was yesterday. Then the offseason happened. We had the infamous ball didn't bounce our way press conference after they fired Mike Vrabel. Very embarrassing moment for Ran Carthon, but maybe even more embarrassing for the Titans because they stuck Ran Carthon up there to explain a decision that he didn't make. But again, it was bad. Then they hired Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan's a good communicator. It looked good. And Ran said hunting together is not the same as hunting at the same time. People ate that up. But it still wasn't really sold. Then came the money. Lloyd Cushenberry, Tony Pollard, Chidobe Awuzie, eventually Calvin Ridley, and finally, L'Jarius Sneed. Let Ran cook. Look at this team. Look at these names. Look at these players. I was skeptical because, again, the Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl champions, you don't get better by giving away your best players. And they had to take a third-round pick because the medicals were so bad as far as Sneed was concerned that nobody else would even sniff. A third-round pick in next year's draft. Seemed a little fishy to me. Carrington Harrison was on the radio in Kansas City at the time, and he said, as people were saying, well, it's not that bad. Well, he said, no, it is that bad, in reference to Sneed's knees. I hear that the Minnesota Vikings were interested. They got a whiff of the medicals. They said, no, we're good. And you were the team that was smarter than everybody else. I didn't buy the Sunshine Pumping podcast when Mike Keith and Dave McGinnis sat there with Ran Carthon and told us it was a good thing that Ran Carthon didn't go to the Senior Bowl, but you did. I didn't buy Chad Brinker talking about his AI cancer curing model or how the collaboration with the Titans is going to provide great things. And I certainly didn't buy when he said that he hopes the fans see that hope is a powerful thing. What? But again, a lot of you wanted to believe. I remember talking with people as far as, people inside the NFL saying, what do you think about Levis? Because this town thinks he's going to be a star. Somebody told me, yeah, I think the town probably thinks he's a little bit better than everybody else thinks he is. But they believed. They liked the coach. They liked the money. They liked the names. They liked the... I had somebody come up to me when I was at a wedding in Toronto. And this was after the Seattle joint practices. And I said that day, the offense could not get a first down in 2 days against Seattle. They had a 2-minute drill. And in the 2-minute drill, Will Levis threw an interception on the first play. Somebody came up to me at the wedding in Toronto and said, you got to admit, we're going to be better than we were last year. And I said, no. And he looked at me and he said, but look at all the players we got. And he would not take no for an answer. And finally I said, you keep saying that. It's not going to change my opinion. But again, at that point in time, I think a lot of you still believed and held out hope. You know what? Maybe Ran Carthon does know what he's doing. Then you saw how Levis played. You didn't like that. Then you saw how disastrous the right tackle situation was for this team season. And I know you didn't like that. Tavondre Sweat looked good in practice. But again, he got his first quarterback hit last week, and he still doesn't have a sack. Kind of waiting on that. Certainly don't like the losing. But again, the one thing that showed, hey, the rest of the league is smarter than you, was the L'Jarius Sneed contract and trade, because nobody else wanted to do it except you. And for some reason, I don't think Titans fans turned their back on Carthon with Chidobe Awuzie's injury. I don't think they turned their back with Lloyd Cushenberry's injury. But I read the replies to Jim Wyatt's tweet today saying that L'Jarius Sneed was going on IR, and there are a lot of unhappy Titan fans with the GM. I think you got to blame Chad Brinker equally. He's the one, of course, that bragged about his AI cancer detecting injury prevention model that could save the owner $1 million or $2 million. As he said, it would be game changing. Well, L'Jarius Sneed's cost you 25. So add him in the list. And I've never had an issue with Brian Callahan per se. Certainly not wowed by him so far. But on an island, I wouldn't just fire Brian Callahan. But I do kind of feel like he might be collateral damage for what I think is a house cleaning that they need to make. But again, this time last year when I was talking about cleaning house, I think 45% of the people were in lockstep with me on Vrabel and maybe 5% in terms of the front office. The Sneed injury today, this one feels different. This one feels like the fans are looking at it and saying they can't do anything right. And again, the one thing I try my hardest to never do is to project my feelings onto you. But that's the vibe I get. I think there were a lot of people who were out on Rand before this, but I think that this, essentially admitting that this is a lost season for the crown jewel of the winter of Let Rand Cook, I think this is the one where even some of the supporters, even some of the pushbackers from this offseason are saying, yeah, I don't know about that. The one for John Robinson, it wasn't Isaiah Wilson. That's the one everybody brings up first. It was Caleb Farley because the warning signs were there. And he did it anyways. And it kind of feels like history might be repeating itself. 615-737-1025 here on the program, 615-737-1025. And then there's another side of this. When it comes to the Sneed acquisition and that it's really hard for me to ignore. And I don't think I'm cherry picking. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. 1025 again.
can you tell Titan fans, in regards to your need, that they have nothing to worry about?
Titans fans, I'm here to tell you that you don't have anything to worry about from the Jerry Sneed knee. The Jerry Sneed is going to go out there every practice, every game, and give you my all. Go back and watch the film. I gave everybody my all, no matter what my knee condition that my knee was in. My knee is in great position. I know what to do to maintain my knee, or whatever I need to do. I got this end on my part. I'm just going out here and play ball. Just give Tennessee Titans fans and this organization all of me.
Well,
so the knee is not a problem.
Okay.
So they can start worrying about that.
There you go, L'Jarius Sneed. Titan fans, do not worry. I'm going to play 5 games this year, not even 5 good games, and then I'm going to pack it up. So there's one thing I can't get out of my head, and I know that this is not completely fair, but I'm going to say, Ian, this is 85% fair.
85% fair, but not 100. Okay.
I'm going to say it's 15% not fair. Because the 2 moves were not made together, but they, again, kind of represent the difference between the 2. The Kansas City Chiefs are a good team. And the Kansas City Chiefs continue to be a good team. And over the last year, they have worked the crap out of the Tennessee Titans. And the Tennessee Titans are a bad team. And apparently, they seem to keep getting worse. Now, the NFL is, in theory, set up like a socialist government. Everybody is supposed to be either 9-8 or 8-9. The worst team gets the best pick in every round of the draft. The best team gets the hardest schedule. Congratulations! You just won the AFC South. Now you get Baltimore, Buffalo, and Kansas City. Good luck. And yet, why is it that the good teams, and there's usually about 3 or 4, happen to always stay good? Kansas City's one of them. Baltimore's another. How come Green Bay and Pittsburgh seem to always be competitive? Well, Jared, there are franchise quarterbacks, and that the Chargers have a franchise quarterback. Until they got Jim Harbaugh in the building, they weren't any good. The Bengals have a franchise quarterback. They're not any good. And it's because the smart teams take advantage of the stupid teams. And L'Jarius Sneed is a prime example of that. Kansas City does not like to spend money. Travis Kelce has even said, if I wanted to get paid the most, I wouldn't be here. Tyreek Hill's in Miami. The 2 guys that Kansas City has said, we will pay no matter what. Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones. You know who Kansas City never said we wanted to pay? Never said we'll pay no matter what? L'Jarius Sneed. Kansas City made it known they weren't interested in giving L'Jarius Sneed a long-term deal. And again, when asked about it, Andy Reid could say publicly, well, it's the cap. But I think you guys are educated enough now to know that the NFL salary cap is fake. And the people inside the league know that. I can promise you, Chad Brinker knows the cap's fake, even though part of his job is to manage the cap. And yet, there was only one team that was interested in L'Jarius Sneed and trading a 3rd-round pick for him. You. Buffalo wasn't interested. Baltimore wasn't interested. The 49ers weren't interested. Philly wasn't interested. You. You were the one. Minnesota, smart team, right? Minnesota just went out and got Sam Darnold for $10 million. They're in first place. Minnesota got one whiff of L'Jarius Sneed's medicals and said, no, thank you. Sorry. This is how good teams stay good and bad teams stay bad. The Kansas City Chiefs, when all is said and done. In fact, I need to pull this up right now. The Kansas City Chiefs will have, after the first round, probably better draft capital than you'll have. Because they'll have their second round pick, your top of the third round pick, and their own third round pick. You won't even have a third round pick. So they'll be able to get an extra top 100 player this year who doesn't have bad knees and who doesn't cost $25 million this
Let's see.
year.
KC has pick 31, 63, 67, and 95. So they'll have 4 in the top 100. Your
You'll have
Titans are 67th. They're 67th overall pick right now. That's the Titans pick.
That one hurts, doesn't it? Like, that one hurts. Again, you'll have your first overall pick, like you'll be picking third overall or whatever. That pick will have a higher value than probably Kansas City's entire draft. But after that, it wouldn't surprise me. The Titans pick value for the second round is $530. The Chiefs pick is $276, but then they pick up $245 because you gave it to them for L'Jarius Sneed. Then there was a second trade. The Titans sent DeAndre Hopkins to Kansas City. Kansas City, 2 weeks before the trade deadline, made the deal. Titans ate all the money, and they got a 5th round pick. Conditionally can be a 4th if the Chiefs make the Super Bowl and Hopkins plays 60% of the snaps. And I'm just going to tell you, that's not going to happen. Hopkins will not play 60% of the snaps. They'll make sure of it. Why? Because they're a smart team, and that's what the smart teams do. The pick value you got for DeAndre Hopkins has a representative value, according to drafttech.com, of 24.2. The pick you gave up for L'Jarius Sneed, 24.2 for their number one receiver. The pick you gave up for 5 games of L'Jarius Sneed, 245. 10 times the value. That is how the good teams stay good and the bad teams stay bad. Remember when you took advantage of the Rams? Yeah, that propelled you into a Super Bowl contending window. In fact, you were right there with the Chiefs. You beat them in 2019. You played them in an AFC title game. Actually had a 17-7 lead in that game. You beat them in 2021. You were right there with them. Then you started making dumb decisions. Caleb Farley, trading A.J. Brown, etc. This is how good teams stay good, get extra top 100 players, and this is how bad teams stay bad. You've traded 2 third-round picks and back your last, or I shouldn't say last because this one's coming up next, a 3-year stretch of third-round picks, a backup injured running back who never plays, Will Levis, L'Jarius Sneed. Way to go. 615-737-1025. We'll hit your phones. 615-737-1025. Plus, I hit Robbie and Joe with a question today that I felt like left them cold. We'll get to that next. Someone to company want to divide the game. Who loves Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey? I do. That's right. Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. It's time to kick off the weekend. By the way, Thanksgiving is coming up. I'm sure a lot of people are going over to family. Do not have a boring Thanksgiving. Have a Fireball Thanksgiving. That's right. Perfect for any Thanksgiving celebration with your family, your friends, Friendsgiving, whatever you want to call it. Fireball Whiskey. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. What would you
There
rank
we
as
go.
their number 2 acquisition over the last 2 years after J.C. Latham, which I think we all agree is number 1?
Well, whatever I do, you're saying it's bad.
That's not true.
Well, that's what you
wanna know
just
you think
said.
the
You
second-
just said. Dude,
I want to know what you think it is, and then we can discuss it.
what's the number 2 acquisition? I mean, there's a few that right now aren't good. Like we haven't seen it. Like Chidobe Awuzie, I like that one. Hasn't played. Sneed.
So that's
I
bad.
like that. Oh, right now, yes, Jared.
With
the
our
crazy
AI
thing about
cancer
this is
curing
there's
model?
more information we're going to get. I know it's hard for you to wrap your mind around. It's like in OTAs when the end of the world if Tavondre Sweat missed a day, for example.
And PT.
Right. I mean, I think Brownlee's a very good pick where he was. Sweat, we'll see. I mean, I'd like to see more from him. But again, the overall draft, it doesn't look too bad.
Okay. This morning I went on Robbie and Joe. And again, Joe is saying you can't fire them because it'll look so bad because Amy should know. I mean, okay. So I don't even remember this morning what led to that part of the discussion when I asked Joe, what's the second best move besides J.C. Latham? And again, I know a lot of people will say, well, hey, there are a lot of busts every year with the 7th overall pick. I mean, look, when you pick 7th, you should get a good player. Doesn't mean you always will, but you should. Like, congratulations, you got a good player. You should have gotten a good player when you picked 11th last year and say you took a guard who's not even good. Way to go. But fine, I'll give you Latham. What is the second best move that they've made? And the truth is, it's hard to decide what the second best move is. And Joe said, whatever you tell me is good, whatever I tell you is good, you're going to say is bad. Which I thought was kind of a stall tactic. Let me think in my head who I get. And he rolled out with Brownlee. If over a 2-year period, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., who, again, I didn't agree with the second one. The first one I thought was legit. Trevor actually thought both penalties were legit. But Jarvis Brownlee committed 2 penalties that cost you 14 points on Sunday. If over a 2-year period, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is the best you can come up with as the second best acquisition they've made, you got problems. Like, serious problems. By the way, the answer is either Nick Folk or DeAndre Hopkins. That would be, in my opinion, the second best move. Then when it comes to Hopkins, I have to ask, well, what about the trade where you sent him out and you got a 5th rounder in return that could be a 4th with those conditionals? The fact that it's hard to answer without saying, well, the kicker ain't bad, should be highly disappointing. And again, I know every time I bring up John Robinson, everybody says, you love J-Rob. And that's not true. John Robinson made bad decisions at the end. Even the A.J. Brown decision, which I understood. Again, you're judged by the results on the field. That was a bad decision. Again, I don't think it ended the franchise the way a lot of people seem to make it out to be. Some people say it's the worst trade in NFL history. It's not even the worst trade of that offseason. The worst trade of that offseason was the Russell Wilson trade or the Deshaun Watson trade. What are we talking about? But again, at this point in John Robinson's tenure, just to compare to a general manager who did no ball, Jack Conklin was already an all-pro. DeMarco Murray had already led the conference in rushing. Kevin Byard was leading the NFL in interceptions, and the Titans had made the playoffs. See the difference? They weren't 2-8 and a touchdown dog on the road. But again, you guys keep telling me I have to love this general manager and I have to love Chad Brinker and I have to love the AI cancer curing model.
Are they saying you have to love it or just that they wouldn't fire them after this year?
To me, it's the same. And you can't even name the second best acquisition they made. What's that tell you? And I think the reason it came up, Ian, is because Rustin Webster, my point is, Rustin Webster drafted a franchise left tackle too. Should they have kept him longer? So
I don't know.
Make
He
of
made
it
some
what
bad.
you will.
He made some bad picks too. But they all make bad picks. Every
They all
GM
make
makes some
bad
bad
picks.
picks. Yeah.
But Webster was a bad GM. Especially when he got saddled. It wasn't totally his fault, but again, you are what your record says you are. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025. The only people unhappy with the general manager are the people who listen to this show because you're pushing for him to get fired. I talk to a lot of people who don't listen to this show, and nobody, the texter says, is saying fire the general manager. Did you see the stadium on Sunday? You can't tell me. And I mean, look, we are popular and our ratings have never been higher. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that, but I will. This is a popular show. I don't know if 67,000 people, maybe they are, I don't know, are listening at one time. But I can promise you that 60,000 people decided not to go to the game on Sunday and sold their tickets to Viking fans. So don't say it's just me. Again, you think those Titan fans that are so disgusted that they didn't even want to come to the game, like they didn't even want to go to the game on Sunday, sell their tickets, 60-degree weather, you think they're saying, no, keep the GM? I have a hard time believing that one. One texter says, Ernest Jones was a good acquisition, but then they traded him away, and that might be the second best acquisition at the moment. An inside backer who made tackles. Woo! Way to go. You know, it's funny. Everybody's afraid to say Tony Pollard might be the best acquisition. Because as soon as you say Tony Pollard's the best acquisition, I'll reply back with saying, and he's not as good as the guy that he replaced, who they just let walk out the door. One texter says, I don't understand why all you guys hate on Ran Carthon. You act like he's the coach, and he's responsible for us losing. Ran has picked great players that everyone has been excited about. He's only been here for less than 2 seasons, and everyone is hating. Who are these players that everyone is excited about? Ian, I'm going to give you a player's name. You tell me if you're excited about them.
Okay.
Skoronski.
A little.
How?
I mean, it's only his second year.
He only kind of sucks.
I like the left side. I think the left side between Christian Berry, Skoronski, and Latham, you can build on for the next year or two. See how it goes.
Okay, are you excited about Levis?
Not particularly.
Are you excited about Spears?
I mean, cautiously optimistic.
He never plays.
Cautiously optimistic.
Are you excited about Josh Wiley?
No, he's just a role player. Not really.
Yeah, he's
a role player.
Are you excited about we can agree we're very happy and pleased with JC Latham right now.
We like Latham, we like Brownlee, we like McCreary.
He didn't pick McCreary.
Was that is this McCreary's third year?
Yeah, Robinson picked McCreary.
Okay.
So he didn't pick him. So Brownlee.
Yeah, we like Brownlee. We like Jaquan Jackson, for a 6th round pick.
I mean, again, excited about?
I don't know about excited, but for a 6th rounder, it's not a bad, solid pick.
I mean, again, this is saying Rand has picked great players that everyone has been excited about. If you have to go to Jaquan Jackson for that, who I'm not even sure has an NFL catch, that is troubling.
He has 2 catches.
He has 2 whole catches. I don't even remember when, in all seriousness, I don't even remember when he caught the ball. I don't even know what these games we're talking about. One texter says, any idea who made the decision for the Vikings to pull their trade offer for Sneed over injury concerns? Replace Rand with that guy. I mean, again, all I heard, I think it was TD at the time, said Minnesota was the other team that was sniffing. And then Minnesota got a whiff of those medicals and said, no, thank you. Sorry. More of your phones next. 615. Ian's over here excited about Skoronski. 615-737-1025.
Excited about the left side. Included Skoronski in there, yes.
Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
Sneed will also go to IR tomorrow. Here's how this, just so I can be clear and transparent so you guys have an understanding of how this worked. As I said before, right, turned out, thought he had a quad bruise. Pretty significant quad bruise, but didn't get better very fast. Turns out after we did some scans on it, he had a pretty significant quad strain on top of that. Those things generally are a couple of weeks. Felt like we'd have a chance to get him back. Has not progressed. It's been complicated, more complicated than a normal strain would be. So the rest is the best thing for him at this point. Not ruling out a return for the end of the year, but the IR at this point makes the most sense for him. Take a couple weeks and try to get that quad right. So it's been sort of a up and down, back and forth injury for him. Complicated. This is the best thing at this point to put him on the IR for the next 4 weeks, and we'll see where he's at again. Not ruling out a return, but he will go on IR tomorrow.
So I just want to be as transparent as I can possibly be with everybody. Just so we're all on the same page. Now, let me tell you the most bullcrap story I can think of. It was originally a 3-week injury, we thought, and then it became more of an injury, and then it was this, and then it was that, and it was, okay. I have a hard time buying that one. That's just me, but I have a hard time buying it. Let's go to your phones. Let's go to Ron, who's up next here on the program. Ron, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared, how you doing today?
Good, go.
Yeah. Okay, hey, I got back in the summer, I think it was before the training camp, you got on the radio and you said that we have to be patient with this team. You know, that we have to let them gel or whatever. I forget exactly how you say it, but it was so inspirational that I had to stop at Walgreens to get some tissues. And I don't know what happened to your philosophy on that. And I also like to say that Will Levis reminds me of Terry Bradshaw when Terry Bradshaw first started
Holy
in
crap.
the NFL league. Yeah, he does. I mean, because they used to call Terry Bradshaw a doofus, a hillbilly, and all this stuff, and he turned out to be a good quarterback. So I want you to go back and listen to what you said in the summer about
Well, I know what I
being
said.
patient.
And I compare the Titans to the Green Bay Packers. And I talked about the Green Bay Packers in the season they had last year. Thank you for the call. And I compared the Titans to the Green Bay Packers. And the Green Bay Packers started off 3-6. And I believe at one point they were 6-8. And they played Carolina at home. And they beat Carolina, the worst team in the league, by 3 points. And they didn't lose again until the NFC divisional playoffs. And I say you got to be patient. Just like the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers lost 8 games last season. You've already lost 8 this season. Being patient is being patient for a Super Bowl contender. It's not, hey, everybody, be patient and accept every loss every week. I did not say in the training camp preview show when I said, hey, it may take some time with a young quarterback and it's going to be this and it's going to be. I did not say, hey, you're definitely going to get worse this year, so let's embrace it. I didn't say that. Again, there's a nuance to this. The idea that Will Levis was going to be Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson in year 2, who both won MVPs, was a little far-fetched for me. But Jared, we've got Calvin Ridley, and we've got Bill Callahan, and Brian Callahan, and we've got the Bengals offense, and we've got the, okay. But it's going to take some time before you become a playoff contender, before you have a not, hey guys, get ready to go to the bottom of the league. That wasn't what I said. You're at the bottom of the league. If I own the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'd fire Doug Peterson today. Wouldn't make a difference if you wait till the end of the season or not, but I'd fire him. But Jared, you said Trevor Lawrence wasn't even that good. You're right. And I believe that. But I don't think Trevor Lawrence is this bad either. So there is a nuance to the patience. My patience ran out with this football team when Malik Willis walked in here and absolutely housed them. Again, I wasn't buying the baloney at right tackle. But I didn't think it'd be this bad. 615-737-1025. By the way, the Terry Bradshaw thing, give it a break. I know. Chuck Noll, bench Terry Bradshaw. Yeah, that was 50 years ago. Doesn't necessarily work that way now. One texter into the text line says, Jared is mad because his Patriot way fell flat. I kind of think the Patriot way is dead. And I will say I was a believer. I ate that stuff up. I thought Belichick was smarter. I thought, the Patriots, they understand things and nobody else gets it. And their scheme is so complicated. And no, they just have the greatest competitor who ever lived at quarterback. It's too bad Michael Jordan and Tom Brady didn't play the same sport, because I would like to know who would be the better competitor between the two. But apparently that's what it was. Because Belichick was no good in Cleveland without Brady. He was no good before Brady got there, and he was no good after Brady. The Patriot way is a mirage. But at that point in time, I believe it. I really believed it. And now I think the Patriot way is dead. So don't do the whole, Jared's just a hater because his Patriot way didn't work out. I don't believe in the Patriot way anymore. Katie Holmes used to belong to the Church of Scientology. She doesn't anymore. It's okay. At least I think Katie Holmes was a member of the Church of Scientology. Could be wrong about that, but, Tom Cruise, I think she joined the church, and then after like 20 years was like, this ain't for me. See you calling for him to be fired. Barry Trotz made the playoffs last year. This idea that it's like they're the same, it's not the case. Now, I will say this. I don't know what my level of bias is when it comes to the Predators as compared to the Titans. But Ran never talks. I mean, I was listening to the Midday Show today. Ian, what's the nickname I've given the Midday Show over the last month?
Something about Carthon.
The Ran Club.
Yes, that's right.
Because Derek and Willie love to take up support for Ran Carthon. I call it the Ran Club with Derek and Willie. Finnegan moderates it because I don't see him as a Ran Carthon fan. And today they were lamenting, why doesn't he talk? He needs to talk. Why doesn't he have press conferences? He needs to have press conferences. Why doesn't he? So even they're wondering that. So maybe it's not even about me and whether or not Ran comes on my show. Also, if Barry came on the show and said the puck didn't bounce their way, I guarantee you those conversations would be different. But Barry's accountable. I mean, when they started 0-5, we had Barry on the show. And yeah, I'll tell it to you like this. I have said, if the Predators lose tomorrow night against Winnipeg, I'm giving up on the season. I will tell Barry at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, if they lose tomorrow, that I've given up on the season. And that I'm not listening to any of the, it didn't bounce this way or it didn't bounce that way. And we'll see. But I think he can handle it because he's a big boy. He can handle a press conference without saying something that gets used against him in court over and over and over again. Like, we checked every box this offseason. So don't say it's about blowing smoke. It's about being accountable. Chad Withrow joins us next here on the program. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Fireball Hot Take Friday. Joined, as always, at 5 o'clock on a Friday by Chad Withrow from Outkick, presented by A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. Chad, the big news today, L'Jarius Sneed on IR. So if I am supposed to believe this story, L'Jarius Sneed played against the Colts in October, whatever it was. He got hit in the helmet or hit in the quad by a helmet. He played the rest of the game, 99% of the snaps, and made the last Titans tackle in that game. According to Brian Callahan today, according to his testimony, Brian Callahan said that it was worse than they thought when they had the MRI, and that there was a bruise and a quad strain, and a quad strain that typically lasts 3 weeks. IR is 4 weeks. He's missed the last 5 weeks, and now they think it's not healing fast enough. He'll go on IR. Callahan is not ruling him out for the rest of the season when he will return in week 16, though I am ruling him out for the rest of the season. Do you buy this story from the Titans? What do you make of it?
Well, I don't know why. I mean, he's hurt. He had problems coming in when they signed him. I'm trying to figure out the motivation as to why they would make that up. If you're inferring that they're not telling the truth on it, what would be the motivation? You think that he's just quit because they're losing, or what are you trying to say?
Again, I can't tell you what it is because I can't. So, like, if it was the knee and the knee's connected to the quad, but they don't want everybody to say, how could it be the knee? After they told everybody, oh, no, our doctors like what they see, we'll be okay. That could be it. Again, to your point, it could be L'Jarius Sneed was in it for the money, which is why he left the Chiefs. And hates being on a team that sucks because when you're on the Chiefs, you're never on a team that sucks this bad. I don't know what it is, but it does to me. It was a helmet to the quad, and now he's out for 9 straight weeks. I have a hard time with that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, I am one that says it's okay to question everything. I tend to just go with what people say when they say it's an injury and he's out. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's just further evidence that it's been a really bad season for the Titans. And this is another example of that. But, I mean, I'm inclined to believe them if that's what they say what it is and it's not healing properly, because I don't really think it saves them that much if it's his knee and then they're going to say, well, no, it's his quad. And, I mean, it's a bad signing regardless if the guy gets hurt. So I don't care what body part it is that's injured. If he's hurt now and you paid him a ton of money to come and help you and he can't play, that's a bad thing for the team. And it's a bad thing for the general manager. You can't always help it. But in a situation where someone was injured in the past, I guess you could see some of that being a possibility. It just sucks all around for the Titans right now.
Do you look at Ran Carthon's tenure and see this move, the Sneed move, which would not be the only move that didn't work out? Dillard didn't work out. Awuzie's been hurt. Cushenberry got hurt, etc. But do you see this move as any different or any more important than the other moves that haven't worked out?
I think it's a collection of all of them. I mean, I can't really point to one and say, well, this was the one that doomed them. You know, I ranked NFL teams by hopelessness on our show, and I went 1 through 9, and I took the 9 teams that have won 3 or fewer games, and I ranked them, and I think I had the Patriots as the least hopeless of the 9 because they've got a rookie quarterback it looks like that they believe in. They got a ton of money in cap space. They got a first-year head coach that is starting to do some okay things. And then the most hopeless team was the Cleveland Browns. Well, why are the Cleveland Browns most hopeless? Because they tied so much money into Deshaun Watson, and they have so much dead money they can't get out of, and they got an owner who's proven to not be very good. So I look at that as the most hopeless situation. I think the Titans are right in the middle of that group when I look at just hopelessness, but there's just not a lot to point to right now that you feel good about, and that does start with Ran Carthon and his free agent signings and his draft picks. I mean, there are a couple of bright spots here and there, but overall, it's just the word I keep coming up with, Jared, is rudderless. It's a rudderless ship. I don't know where you're really casting your lot with this team right now. And that goes from Amy Adams-Strunk down to Ran Carthon to Chad Brinker, down to Brian Callahan to the quarterback situation. I just don't know where I'm hanging my hat if I'm a Titans fan at this point.
Chad Withrow with us from Outkick. Do you make anything of the Viking fan takeover on Sunday? I mean, we've seen visiting fans at Nissan Stadium a lot, but when John Glennon and PK say it's the biggest takeover they've ever seen, and it's the Vikings, not the Steelers or the Cowboys, to me, that raised a lot of eyebrows. Does it mean anything to you?
It means a lot to me. And I've said this for a while, and I'll continue saying it. The Titans fan base is one of the smallest and worst in the NFL. And that is just a fact. And they have a branding problem. You have a branding problem when so many associate with the team you were before in the Houston Oilers. I don't understand the connection to the Houston Oilers logo or any of that stuff. They need to be a Titans brand. From day one, I thought it would have been better to be the Nashville Titans to start with. That would have helped the overall brand, especially as Nashville grows. But it's the lack of success. You know, they came out in 1999 like gangbusters in that stadium, and it became a destination to go to Titans games on Sundays. It's so far removed from that. And it's very much fair weather. You know, when they're good, more people will show up. But those fan bases you talked about that travel, they're always going to take over. Bills fans will always take over the stadium. But when it's the Vikings, it's not a good thing for the team, especially as they build this new stadium, which I understand it's going to have so much corporate money going into it. It's probably not going to matter, and it's still going to make ownership a ton of money with all the other events that are going to happen and everything else. But, yeah, this fan base has an identity crisis, and that's because the team is not giving them enough to hang their hat on, and they don't have an identity, and they got a problem when it comes to branding. And I think we've seen the cracks of this for years and years. They can just masquerade some of it when they're winning more football games, and they're not doing that right now. I'd say the height of Titans fandom in the last 25 years for me was that trip to the AFC Championship game and being around the fan base that traveled to Kansas City for that game. It felt like the Titans were a legitimate NFL franchise at that point in time with a legitimate large fan base. I don't feel that way at all now. I feel like it's a destination spot to come in and get cheap tickets to go watch your team win a game. That's what the Titans have become.
That is depressing. If I was talking to Chad Withrow from Outkick and I was, a different city, different whatever, you were not on Nashville radio, but you were on Houston radio, and we were previewing the game with Chad Withrow from Outkick. You can hear him on Hot Bite with Hutton and Withrow on the Outkick Network. If this were something and I asked you, are Brian Callahan and Ran Carthon on the hot seat, what would you say?
I would say Ran Carthon is. I'd say Brian Callahan isn't right now. And I think that's the way it should be. I think Ran Carthon is on the hot seat. There's nothing he can do the rest of this season that's going to tell you whether or not, he should come back or not. But if you're ownership, you do have to look around and just have a legitimate conversation and thought with a lot of people. Is this the right guy to lead the organization moving forward? I don't know what the answer to that is, but you got to ask the question. Too early to tell on Brian Callahan. I don't like some of what I've seen so far, but the only way that you make that move is if you have decided that the football side of things needs a complete overhaul, and you're going to allow the new general manager or president of football ops or whatever the title is, you're going to allow that person to hire their coach. If you make that determination, then that's how Brian Callahan gets got in all of this. But right now, I don't think he's done enough bad to warrant him being fired or anything like that.
So I completely agree with everything you just said. If it were just Callahan in a vacuum, I'd say I'm not overly impressed, but I wouldn't fire him. But I would clean house, and he would be collateral damage if I owned the team. If you owned the team, would Callahan be collateral damage? Would you bring everybody back? Or would you just fire Ran and try to hire a GM who says they'll work with Brian Callahan if you own the team?
I would hire a head of football to do whatever the hell they want. That's the tact I would take. Now, if that was, hey, they really like Brian Callahan, they can work with this, they like his pedigree, they like what he did in Cincinnati, they like the guy, they're willing to work with him, and in fact, they want to work with him, I'm okay with that if that's the person I hired to run football. But if the person that runs football is coming in and saying, hey, I'm hiring Bill Belichick, I'm just throwing a name out there, not saying that would be the one, or whoever it is, I would say, great. I am hiring you to revamp this entire department, run it the way you see fit, and go find your coach and go hire him, and we'll hire him for a negotiated amount of money and then we move forward as an organization. But again, I don't know that Brian Callahan has to be collateral damage in this, but if the person that I trust with the football side of things that I bring in and hire does not want Brian Callahan, that is the decision for them to make. And in doing so, he could end up being collateral damage.
Yeah. Chad Withrow with us on the program. Have you had any changing of your opinion based upon the last 2 weeks for Will Levis?
No, not at all. I mean, what has he done? They've lost. They're 1-9 against the spread.
Unbelievable.
Like, we're not even talking about that part of it. Every team not just beats them, they cover against them. That is horrendous. It's hard to find NFL teams that don't even cover the spread the way the Titans don't cover the spread. And he's the quarterback of the team. I mean, he hasn't had catastrophic turnovers. So, I mean, do we give him a standing ovation for that? He's a 25-year-old NFL quarterback. Like, I'm so sorry if I expect more than a high completion percentage. I expect some wins. I expect some huge plays. I expect some better leadership, some better moments from a guy that's supposed to be a franchise quarterback. And if you're asking me right now, I'm saying he's definitely not it.
Chad Withrow with us on the program. If Brian Callahan was confiding in you and he said, Chad, everybody tells me that with ownership, this is a big game on Sunday against the Texans. We're 7.5-point dogs. Not sure really have much of a shot of winning the game. What would you say to him about how the owner feels about Houston and what her wrath could be if it ends up being as bad as some of these others have been?
Well, I mean, I think Brian Callahan's smart enough to know all this. I wouldn't certainly need to tell him. But my advice would be, don't look awful. Now, what's best for the Titans organization right now? It's to continue losing and to get a higher draft pick. So best case scenario, it's a down-to-the-wire game or it goes to overtime, and the Titans lose in overtime to Houston, where you save face, you look good, you don't get embarrassed, but you continue to salvage that higher draft pick with a loss. That's the best case scenario. But, I mean, the fact that we're talking about this, that because it's Houston and they play them twice a year and the owner feels strongly about Houston, I mean, what are we even doing? Like, the owner needs to worry about football getting fixed at some point. And to do that, she's going to have to hire the right people or not fire someone because she's emotional about a loss or something that happened. Like, we got to have some level-headed thinking here and get some clarity of purpose with this organization, or every time I visit you on Friday, it's going to be this depressing. And I hate being this depressed as I go into Thanksgiving because it's one of my favorite times of year.
Chad Withrow is presented by Moments Peace Salon and Day Spa. More with Chad coming up next. The hot seat awaits. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Those are my guys. Hiller was here this week. They did great work. They were in doing work all day. They were out. Everything was perfect. Good as new. That's what Hiller does. And Hiller's Cash for the Holidays promotion is back. And they're giving away cash for the holidays with select purchases. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems or a new whole home generator. Or get a $250 Visa gift card when you buy a new tankless water heater. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today by visiting happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face truck today. Chad Withrow with us on a Friday, as always, presented by Moments Peace Salon and Day Spa. Chad, do you have a thought, or do you want to go to the hot seat?
As long as every question on the hot seat is not about how bad the Titans are, then I'm ready to go to the hot seat.
Okay, the first question is exactly that, but it is the only one that is exactly about how bad the Titans are. Nicholas Petit-Frere has allowed 7 sacks this season at the right tackle position. He has been replaced 4 times, and he will start this week against the Houston Texans. Is Nicholas Petit-Frere the single worst Titans player that played significant snaps, or can you think of somebody worse?
Well, there was a guy by the name of Will Zvitek who started one game against J.J. Watt and played some as a reserve for the Titans. And it's
I don't think that counts.
Maybe the single worst offensive line performance that I've ever seen from an NFL player. So I'd put him on the list. But it's hard to go back down the list of every Titan. No, not the worst because I've seen Will Zvitek, so I'll go with him.
So I don't think he counts because he played one game. To me, it's a very small list. And it's him, Andre Dillard. And do you remember Deron Jenkins?
Yeah, former Vol.
Had the nickname Toast, and he played corner.
Yeah.
He was
not good in his time in Nashville. Yeah, I mean, there's been some bad ones. He's definitely on the list.
Okay, number 2. Mike Vrabel, reports were maybe the Browns, if they had lost yesterday, they would have turned to Vrabel. They won, so that's out. But Diana Rossini says she thinks Vrabel might have her pick of jobs. Not sure that that's necessarily true. But there is a lot of chatter surrounding Mike Vrabel, who will be on the Manning cast this Monday night. Where do you think Mike Vrabel ends up?
I think he's going to be the next Jets coach. That seems like the spot for Mike Vrabel. Now, is it completely over with Aaron Rodgers? I think so. But, you're going to have a new general manager coming in with Joe Douglas out, Mike Vrabel coming in. They're clearly going to want to still be in win-now mode. So what's the best way to win now? Is it Rodgers? Not so sure anymore. He looks really old. But Tom Brady looked really old in 2019. When the Titans beat them up in Foxborough, I was there. Logan Ryan picks off his last pass as a Patriot. I thought he was done. I thought his career was over. And he goes to Tampa Bay and wins the Super Bowl. Do I expect that to happen for Aaron Rodgers? No. But can I definitively say that his career is over? But based on knowing that, I can't say that either. So that's an interesting spot because they've got some good young talent still around that team for the Jets. So if I'm going to pick right now, I think Mike Vrabel is the next Jets head coach.
Who is more at fault for the Giants' problems at quarterback? Daniel Jones or the Giants?
It's Daniel Jones. Now, the Giants haven't helped him, but it gets crazy to me with people being so reverential about, Daniel Jones and him being allowed to give that farewell speech. I'm thinking, the guy has cost the organization so much money. He got overpaid. He has not been good enough. Is it all his fault? No. Have they done enough to get offensive linemen and players to help protect him? No, they haven't. But what the organization does is they pay you an absurd amount of money as a quarterback. And what you can't fall back on is, well, they didn't give me enough great offensive linemen, and that's why it didn't work out. Well, they still paid you. Those checks cleared. They continue to clear. So I'm not in for the pity party with Daniel Jones. I'm not celebrating in the guy being benched or his failure or any of that. I'm also not going to throw a ticker tape parade down Madison Avenue for a guy that won one playoff game in 6 years.
The Cincinnati Bengals are 4-7 after falling to the Chargers on Sunday Night Football in another heartbreaker. Should the Bengals, with a generational quarterback, generational wide receiver, and the NFL's leading sacker, move on from Coach Zach Taylor?
That's a tough one. That is an organization where you can blame ownership for a lot of the ills of it, and we know that throughout time. A cheap organization. So knowing that, no, I don't think they should move on from Zach Taylor. I think you could kind of chalk this up as a mulligan and hope you come back and you're competitive in that division again next year. Because I know how cheap ownership is in Cincinnati with the Brown family, I think he gets another year.
But see, wouldn't you say last year was the mulligan because Burrow got hurt? So now we're giving him a mulligan 2 years in a row, including a mulligan with Burrow?
Yeah, and Burrow's been great. And Zach Taylor's an offensive guy. So Again, I'm saying you're trying to get me to try to predict what sometimes irrational and cheap people that are bad owners are going to do. I don't think they're going to fire him. Do I think he should be fired? I'd like to see how the rest of the season plays out before knowing.
By the way, if I owned the team, I'd fire him. I think it would be you get any candidate you wanted for the job because of who your quarterback is. I'd go after Nick Saban.
Nick Saban's not going to coach the NFL. That'd be nice to give him a call, but he's not coaching.
You don't think Nick Saban, with Joe Burrow at quarterback, would want to give it a go? Because we know why he got out of college, right? NIL, and he didn't want to do it.
He got out of college because they were getting paid and they had power. You know who's got power in Cincinnati? Joe Burrow, even if Nick Saban is the coach. So he's not going to answer to a quarterback who's complaining about him or a member of his staff. It's the exact same reason he got out of college football. It's the same reason he got out with the Dolphins. He didn't have total power. He couldn't sign Drew Brees when he wanted to. And the players, could form a mutiny against you because they get paid more than you do. So, no, Nick Saban is not going to be an NFL coach. Never again.
Ohio State is favored tomorrow by 10.5 against number 5 Indiana. Chad Withrow, how bad will the beatdown be? And will Indiana make a real case for the college football playoff tomorrow?
The sharp money has been on Indiana late in the week. That line opened at 2 touchdowns. I think 14.5. It's down to 11 or 10. So it continues to creep back towards Indiana. Ohio State's kind of played with their food at times this year, and they did lose their starting center, Seth McLaughlin, the transfer from Alabama this week, torn ACL. That doesn't help their offense. As we get closer to game time, I think it's going to be right around the point spread. I think it's going to be 10 to 14 points that Ohio State wins. Now, everyone that's off the bubble or on the bubble right now needs Ohio State to blow them out in this game. But I think it's going to be right around 2 touchdowns when all's said and done. I would actually be surprised if Ohio State came out and just smacked them. But let's say it's a 17-point win or 14-point win. It's going to be just a crazy amount of debate about what Indiana is because their schedule is terrible and they would have no huge win on their resume. They also would have pretty much spanked everyone on their schedule, which is something when you win all those games the way they did. So it's going to be quite the debate on Indiana. I'd say the same about Penn State too. I mean, they may end up high seed and hosting a game in the playoff without having a single, what we would call gigantic banner win on the season.
The number 1 quarterback in the country, Bryce Underwood, flips to Michigan from LSU. How much trouble is Brian Kelly in?
He's in a lot of trouble, and it could get a lot worse if they lose to Vandy tomorrow night at home. I mean, that's 2 6-4 teams. Oh, right. Well, what if I'd have told you coming into the season, you'd look at that game and say, oh, Vandy's playing out the string and LSU's trying to stay relevant in a college football playoff race. And now it's 2 middle-of-the-road SEC teams at 6-4 going head-to-head, and it's only a touchdown line. So that's a big one for Brian Kelly. It's not good because what I see when Bryce Underwood leaves for Michigan, and I know they're paying him a lot more money than LSU was going to pay him, if Brian Kelly was in great standing, he could have called his top boosters or gotten with the collective and made sure they gave him whatever he wanted, if it was another $1 million a year or whatever. They could have upped the ante to keep him. But the fact that the big money people did not come through for him, which I don't blame them right now, shows me that they're likely out on Brian Kelly. And they're probably asking the question, what kind of investment is it for me if I'm going to pay more money to get you NFL-level talent and you're going to go 7-5? So I do think it's becoming a problem for Brian Kelly. He's not going to get fired this year, but next year is going to be super important. And if Garrett Nussmeier goes pro, he's going to be going into that year with no quarterback.
I kind of feel, though, like with LSU, they're not going to fire Kelly this year because the buyout's like $60-something million.
Right.
But I kind of feel like Kelly hates it there and they hate Kelly. I just don't know if there's any coaches I look at in college football where I'm like, okay, this is the next wave of big-time job coaches.
Yeah, there's no – who's going to step up and prove it? Right, the way Kirby Smart did it with back-to-back championships. Dabo Swinney's won titles. But those are the 2 guys who have done it. So when we get in this playoff, is Ryan Day going to emerge? as a big game, big time coach and go win a title? Is Kalen DeBoer going to come through? Is James Franklin ever going to win a big game? Is Josh Heupel going to step up to the next rung where he's a great coach and not just a really good coach with a really good program? There are a lot of questions that I have about everybody not named Kirby Smart. Who's going to take that next step? I think Lane Kiffin took a step by beating Georgia at home, but he's also got a loss to Kentucky on his resume. And he lost at LSU. And that, let's say LSU loses to Vandy. Well, suddenly the loss at LSU is a really bad one for Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. So I'm kind of like you, Jared. I'm ready to see who that next coach is that's going to take that step up. Dan Lanning is another great example of someone who could be that coach.
What about Sark?
Yes, he's on the list of guys who could step up and do it. He was in the playoff a year ago. But, I look at Texas and I'm thinking, other than the eye test, what have they done this year? Their two big wins are at Vanderbilt and at Arkansas. They'll get a chance against A&M, but even after A&M, they get blown out at home by Georgia or beaten pretty easily. They don't play Alabama. So, Sark gets hot in the playoffs and goes and wins one, and he's on that list of great coaches too, but I wouldn't put him there right now.
Chad Withrow from Outkick, presented by Moments Peace Salon and Day Spa. Chad, great stuff as always. We'll talk next week.
All right, have a great weekend.
Yep, Chad Withrow on our program from Outkick. Coming up next, it's a rivalry. It's not a rivalry to me, but it is to them. We'll get to it next on the Company 105 The Game.
this game's always meant something special to the Adams family down the street from their other backyard. You ever get any sense of that from Amy during the interview process, joking around or doing anything here? Or do you get a sense of it from other people who've been around here a long time?
I think it's more the latter. You just get it, the history of it. This is my first time in this organization going against that particular one, and I understand the history, and I can see how it would absolutely mean more to the people that have been involved in it for a long time. And but to me, it's a big divisional game, regardless of who it is. It's the same to me as Indianapolis would be, as Jacksonville would be. But I do understand the historical context of it, and it does probably mean more to a lot of people. But for us, we're just going to go out there and see if we can find a way to win it.
We're just worried about one game at a time. We're just, the owner's not. Let me say this. I don't care about the Texans. There's not like a rivalry sense with me. If the Titans got matched up in a playoff game against the Texans, I'd be fine with it. I'd want to win it the same as I want to win a game against Kansas City. The same as I'd want the Titans to win a game against Cincinnati. Cincinnati came in here in the playoffs, beat the Titans. I don't harbor some sort of angst or anger or hatred towards the Bengals. Baltimore, that's a different discussion. I hate the Ravens. And I don't care that Derrick Henry's on them. I hope they lose every game. I really do. So this game means more to Amy Adams-Strunk and Kenneth Adams and the people who, own the team than it does, I would assume, to most of the fans. If I had to rank the AFC South and how I feel about the three teams in terms of my dislike, I'd go Indy 1, Jacksonville 2-ish, and Houston right behind Jacksonville. There's Indy, a gap, and then the other two. Other than that, not sure I hate any one team more than the other. But let me tell you who I do love. I love the Texans vice president. That is technically her title. Vice President Hannah McNair happens to be married to the owner, Cal McNair. Not sure how she got the job. I guess, she interviewed very well. I don't know. But I like Hannah McNair for a couple of reasons. Number one, Ian, have you seen pics of Hannah McNair?
Negative.
Well, I'll just say I like Hannah McNair. And number two, she's got some personality when it comes to the ownership position, and she talks some stuff. And yesterday was no different. According to the Houston Chronicle, quote, Texans owner Cal McNair, speaking at an event where they visited Houston Fire Station 33 and had breakfast with several firefighters to honor first responders, had kept it diplomatic, saying the players and coaches know each other well, playing each other twice a year, and he called it, quote, a challenge. Hannah McNair, his wife, the Texans Foundation vice president, was a little more blunt. Quote, we've taken over Houston, she said. We've taken our fans back. So they are just the Titans now. Now, let me say this. In NFL circles, most people know not to say things like that because when you say things like that, usually you get your tail kicked. I remember last year, Nick Saban went apoplectic on his coach's show because a caller called in and said, Coach, every game we know we're going to win. We just want to know how much we're going to win by. And Saban went nuts. One time I asked Floyd, I said, nobody ever seems to, these coaches like Belichick and Saban, they play a team, the Scarbinis of the poor, and they get up there and tell us how good they are. And he said, because people like me and Nick and Bill have lost too many games to ever sit there and say, oh, we're going to beat somebody. But Hannah McNair doesn't care. Hannah McNair's not coaching. And again, if I was Cal McNair, Hannah McNair wouldn't be getting fired either. But her comments don't really hold any bulletin board weight. Certainly me, a Titan fan, 35 years old. I remember the first game, Al Del Greco nailed a field goal to beat the Bengals by 1 point. They played the expansion Cleveland Browns in week 2. They beat Jacksonville in week 3, and I was hooked. Those kind of comments. The city of Houston is ours now. They're just the Titans to us. That doesn't mean anything to me. I don't care. That probably doesn't mean anything to Will Levis or mean anything to Calvin Ridley or, again, mean anything to anybody who's going to be playing the game on Sunday. Probably doesn't mean anything to Brian Callahan. What does Brian Callahan care about the fans in the city of Houston? But that's not what Hannah McNair's target audience is when she's firing a shot like that. Number one, her target audience is her own fans. We've won them back over in Houston. But the other is Amy Adams Strunk. That's her town. When that's in the Houston Chronicle, that's her newspaper. And if I've learned anything about this organization, it is they care about the Texans and the city of Houston. It's kind of funny, right? Again, this would be like a college football coach having his own vendetta against a rival school and not one other person who roots for that school caring. It would be like if Sharon Moore, the Michigan coach, had a serious hatred for Purdue. Not one Michigan fan cares about Purdue, but they do care about Ohio State. And so, again, I got to give Hannah McNair credit because normally we don't get spice at the ownership position. But that message that she had, that was intended for one person and to get under the skin of one person. And if I know anything about Amy Adams Strunk, it got under her skin. Now, there is a difference between the Titans and the Texans that nobody wants to talk about, but I'm going to bring it up. And it starts at ownership. Do you know that the Texans are spending $32 million more on their roster than the Titans? The Texans, according to overthecap.com, are ninth in cash spending at $286 million. The Titans are 24th at $254 million. What does that $32 million buy you? In the case of the Texans, it's $9 million for Danico Autry, a guy that you sorely miss. It's $13 million for Dalton Schultz, a tight end you don't have. And it's $9.8 million for Shaq Mason, who's probably not worth $9.8 million, but is a legitimate starting guard. And on Sunday, you'll be starting the guy that you circled all offseason long to play right tackle, Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. Ian.
PT.
PT. When you have more money and you're willing to spend more money, again, fans believe in the salary cap. I don't. And I think most people that listen to this show know how innately fake the NFL salary cap is. But when you have more money, in the case of the Texans, $32 million towards their team than the Titans do, it's like having more draft picks. You get more chances to get it right. John Robinson, for instance, had 3 second-round picks in 2016. Kevin Dodd was a bust. Austin Johnson was a run-stuffing DT they took in the second round. Everybody apparently seems to love those now. They didn't like it then. And the third was Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's headed to the Hall of Fame. If they didn't have the extra picks, they wouldn't have drafted Derrick Henry. When you have more money in free agency, again, you get more players. And that is something that nobody ever talks about. We spent all this money this offseason, and again, still rank in the bottom third of the league in cash spent. You want to beat the Texans? Well, hire a coach like the Texans. Get a front office with somebody who knows football like the Texans. But also, be willing to spend like the Texans. And then maybe you can win a game wearing the Oiler throwbacks against the Texans, and you can fire a shot back at Hannah McNair. And you can say, we own Houston too. Until then, enjoy what is a 7.5-point spread. And if I was making the line, it'd be closer to 11. But you get what you pay for. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. 6-pack picks are next at Stillman & Company on 102.5 The Game. Time to make our picks at the end of the week. As always, Ian, how did we do last week?
3-3.
So we're still basically at about 500.
So we're
for the
still
season.
basically at 500 on the season. Yep, the season total is now 36, 35-1. Let's see. Last week you missed Oregon, you got Georgia, you missed the Ravens, you missed Kansas City, you got the Chargers, and you got the Vikings.
Yeah, Kansas City, that was not my best. That one, Kansas City never beats Buffalo in the regular season. And then everybody always says, oh, Buffalo, they're for real. And then they play in the playoffs and Kansas City wins. I don't know why I didn't see that cycle repeating itself. That one's on me. That was a bad mistake on my part. All right, let's get to it. We got Jake and TD in the on deck circle. So, Ian, let's roll.
All right. We begin with
big noon kickoff.
That's right. Probably the biggest game of the weekend in college football. I guess I probably shouldn't say probably, but number 5 Indiana is at number 2 Ohio State, 11 a.m. on Fox. You can hear the coverage also right here on 102.5 The Game. 52.5 for the over-under. The number we have right now is Ohio State minus 11.
I'll lay the points with Ohio State. I would be far more interested if this game was in Bloomington, but it's not. This is a pretender or contender moment for Indiana. I like their coach and the fact that they have James Madison's entire team, but I also got to be realistic about it. I'll go ahead and take the Buckeyes.
Okay, that brings us to our second college game. 6-4 Vandy at 6-4 LSU, 6:45 SEC Network, coverage on 94.9 The Fan, 53.5 for the over-under, LSU minus 7.5.
So I heard Clark Lee say, like, hey, after the South Carolina game, we needed a week off, just mentally and emotionally and physically and everything. But I still got to take LSU. And I know, it's a touchdown spread and it could be a close game with Pavia. Vandy doesn't necessarily have to win it. I wouldn't be shocked if Vandy wins this game. But for me to pick Vanderbilt to either win or cover at LSU, I got to see it. Or this just has to be a god-awful LSU team. And this is a bad LSU team by LSU standards, but it's not a god-awful LSU team. So I'm going to take LSU, but I would not be surprised if Vandy makes this a close game with Pavia at quarterback. I'll take LSU.
Okay, moving over to our NFL games this week. We will start 9-1 Lions at the 5-6 Colts, noon on Fox, 49.5 for the over-under. Detroit is minus 7.5.
So I literally said in my head 7.5, thinking that would be the line. I'll take the Lions on this. But Anthony Richardson did play well last week and win over the Jets. And I will be fascinated to see how Anthony Richardson plays week 2 after the benching. But I got to take the Lions on this one. I think they'll win this game comfortably.
Sunday Night Football this week. Interesting matchup. The 8-2 Eagles are headed out west to the 5-5 Rams. Sunday Night Football, 7:20 NBC. 48.5 for the over-under. Philly is minus field goal.
I literally just said in my head, Eagles minus 3. I'll take Philly. I think the Rams are kind of fugazi. Stafford has some of these moments where he looks like Stafford, and Kupp is there, and Nakua is there, but no Aaron Donald makes them a very mortal team. And I actually think Philly might be good. So I'm going to take the Eagles, and I think the Eagles are probably going to win 8 or so. Give me Philly.
All right, pretty good Monday Night Football game this week. The 7-4 Ravens also going out west to take on the 7-3 Chargers. Monday Night Football.
Ooh.
Monday Night Football, 7:15.
The Harbaugh Bowl.
That's right. I didn't even think about that. 7:15 ABC, ESPN. Over under a little bit higher than you would think. 50.5. Baltimore is minus 3.
I think the Chargers. This is a big gut check for the Chargers. They've beaten some bad teams, and the Bengals are a bad team, even though it was a great game. But there's something about Harbaugh and Herbert. It's coming together. I'll take the Chargers.
All right. That brings us to the Titans game. The 2-8 Titans at the 7-4 Texans, noon on CBS. Second lowest over-under of the week, 40.5. Houston, minus 8.
I'm going to take the under. And I am going to take the Texans. and I believe this is going to be a massacre. PT is starting at right tackle. The Titans season is over. This game means more to the Texan fans than it means to the Titans roster. Texans 34, Titans 3. I think it will be a massacre. Give me the Texans. That's it for us. The award-winning pregame show is Sunday at 9:30 live from Twin Peaks. Meanwhile, Jake and TD are next.